Hello and welcome back. So my setup is a little bit different than you're probably used to today because I have a big announcement. So we'll be doing an episode today, our first ever episode of Warcraft Workshop. Me, Jedit, and also Automatic Jack are going to be featured in this episode. So definitely stick around for that. It's going to be in about 40 minutes from now. Probably in about 30 minutes, I'll have to get everything set up, do a quick check, and then we can hit the ground running. But until then, I just want to get the stream set up and cover some of the latest news here and also give you a little bit of my take on the Noble Garden stuff. We have a new mount. It looks like a new love rocket that Blizzard has added in. By the way, if anything is weird with my audio, let me know. Would like to suss out anything right away if anything's acting up. But from my end, it looks like everything is good. So chat, you can confirm that for me. Let me know if something's off. But I believe everything is set up correctly here. But anyways. So yeah, here we have it. A new love rocket. So you can get your hands on this carpet. It is a 1% drop, which is kind of lame that they keep doing these 1% drop mounts for holiday events. I really don't like limited time events having like such a low drop rate. It's kind of lame. They should give you the option to maybe get this thing from like other sources, maybe spending your tokens, right? Your eggs that you collect. But let me know how you feel about this. I've already let you know where I stand. I'll tell you what though, an event where you just click little eggs on the ground, that's pretty nice. You can just use your interact key, no big deal. Go around, spamming interact, getting your eggs. I think I've already collected like 600 eggs. I bought the little lovely duck. I bought the some of the outfits. The spring turquoise transmog you have to get from the actual boss. There was a bug early on where you could kill the boss, you could loot the item, and you could share the quest to anyone. They didn't have to kill the boss. They could just take the quest and turn it in and get their little bag at a chance for the mount there. But it appears they just hotfixed that out. But yeah, as I'm sure you know, if you've been on the internet today, unfortunately today is April Fool's. I say unfortunately because there's always like stuff that comes up on April Fool's that you really wish it were true, and you just hold out hope. Really annoying holiday, honestly. I made a bait tweet actually for this one. Hopefully some of y'all saw it. Saying that Shadowlands was the best expansion ever. This was my April Fool's. Because clearly this isn't true, right? I don't think anyone can agree with this, but I had to think of the most outrageous thing. Low tier bait, but, you know, got some people with it. But yeah, so World of Warcraft actually did their own April Fool's. We'll look that over real quick here. So let's see here. Yeah, I thought they were actually pretty clever with it too. You like Shadowlands more than you like Dragonflight? Interesting. What made you like it more? So yeah, here's what Blizzard actually put out there for April Fools. So they said they're pleased to announce that all the classes are perfectly balanced. No class changes. Incredible. Good job, Blizzard. You did it. New raid. It says Vault of Turbinates. A new raid that is entirely underwater and likely breathtaking. All throughout the raid, you'll have the thrill of constant requirement to keep your eye on your air meter and coordinate with your raid team to go back up to the surface. Ah, yes. Sounds great to me. Also, okay, this is actually the funniest part. Plunderstorm, the sequel. Coming very soon, we're releasing a completely non-PvP sequel to Plunderstorm. This event has no PvP whatsoever. It's super easy to pick up the rewards. They're all just laying on the ground in relative safety of the starting zones. Look for this relaxing in-game activity on your calendar under the name Noble Garden. Got him. I've seen a lot of people complain about the Plunderstorm having PvP. I think that's a good way to address it. That's a funny way too. Taya says, I don't like the way daily and weekly content works in Dragonflight. I haven't really enjoyed the new zones in Dragonflight. I don't really like the latest raid. I really like the raid in Shelllands. Oh, okay. So, like, what sort of weekly content are you doing in Dragonflight? Because I don't really do weekly content except for, like, maybe a key. That's it. I just do, like, one key. Oh, they also added new classes here. Obviously, these are all fake, but Nurse Warrior. You have your Disinfected stance, your Furious Sues, Cold Steel, Hot Blood Donation, Massacre, and Rehabilitating Shout. Lightheaded Paladin. Paladin gets lost in thought and feels much more peaceful. Your blessings cause all party members to get up and stretch, with a random chance that they'll have a nice shared eon. Paladin's holy inquiries are delivered with feet up on the desk, hands behind the head, leaning back and making the accused feel 30% less anxiety. Oh, that's good. Yeah. But yeah, just some run-of-the-mill April Fool's crap. We love that, though. They always do pretty funny stuff with it. But yeah, anyway, so today's the first day of Noble Garden. Again, super annoying that they're doing this 1% mount shit. Not a fan of it. But it is what it is, right? Okay, so before we get started here, I am going to set up the scene. So bear with me, chat, 1 second. I need to plug this in. You're going to see some background stuff here. That's fine. The scene won't make sense for a little bit. I just need to drag a file in. Bloop. Okay, and that should set up soon. Okay. Should be good to go on that. Yeah, I like Dragonfly a lot more than Shelllands. I'll tell you that. Shelllands was really frustrating with the Covenant system. Was not a fan of the Covenant system. Not at all. Just didn't like it. And they finally pulled the ripcord at the very, very end. But they took way too long to get to the ripcord, man. People were saying, like, even in the beta, people were saying, like, yo, this Covenant thing where you're, like, locking us into one spec isn't good. Like, we aren't a fan of this. But they didn't listen. How's it going, Jets? What can you do, right? Oh, so do we have anything else here? Okay, yeah, so Noble Garden, we already talked about this. They do have some more weekly DPS rankings. Surprise, surprise, Melee's at the top. I mean, is anyone surprised that Rogue has been at the top for so long? You shouldn't be. You shouldn't be surprised by this. I feel like Rogue has just been so overpowered this entire patch from start to finish, and they've nerfed it so many times. Still overpowered. Beast Mastery's down here too. Now that people are running less Augs, Beast Mastery has a lot less juice, because a lot of where Beast Mastery was gaining its power was from Augmentation Evokers. They were stealing the damage. But now less Augs are running and Beast Mastery is down bad. But yeah, all the legendary classes are up here. The only thing that can defeat it is a rogue, of course, because rogues are overpowered. Yeah, we also have the dinar, or the bullion. We'll be talking more about all these topics, by the way, once we get into our Warcraft Workshop. We'll be starting that up in about 30 minutes from now. But yeah, so there's a quest on the PTR right here, Emissary of War. So this, we don't know if this is going to be a weekly thing. Typically, the Emissary of War only happens every couple weeks. So they could do different words for the other events to happen on the other weeks, like the Time Walking one, the Pet Battles one, the PvP one. Those could all be random other crap, right? But this specific one on the PTR was awarding 2 antique bronze bullions. Hopefully I'm saying that right. B-U-L-L-I-O-N, bullion. Apparently it's a real word. This is like a word for like some sort of currency, some sort of ancient currency, kind of like dinar. Dinar is like some sort of Middle Eastern currency, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, chat, but I believe that's where the word comes from. But yeah, same concept here. They're doing some bullion currency drops. Obviously, with 2 of them, you'll be able to buy an item. So they could go about this a couple different ways. You could just get 2 a week, right? Or it could just be like 2 every couple weeks. But either way, though, as long as we're getting like at least 6 of these, I'm probably okay with it. Bullion is a solid gold or silver bar. Okay. But yeah, as you know on the PTR, like a lot of the items that we want, a lot of the good shit is rare, right? Because we've got the rare trinket, we've got the rare neck, we've got the rare cloak, we've got the rare ring, and the other rare ring. There's 2 rings, right, that we want that are rare. And then obviously we need the legendary upgrade, the awakened scales. We buy that with bullions as well. It may also drop from the raid. Like, we don't actually know that yet. We don't know where it comes from. It could be exclusive to the bullion. It could be also dropping from the boss. I feel like that would make more sense if it also dropped from the boss, but that's just my own personal opinion on it. We'll have to wait and see. But either way, this is going to be a super important currency because it allows you to get anything you want, right? We're talking deterministic loot, baby. So good. And I wish this was something that Blizzard would keep in the game, even after Season 4. They always say it's just a Season 4 thing, and they get rid of it after the Season 4 finishes. They did the same thing with Dinar and Shadowlands. But if you ask me, having loot be a little bit more deterministic, especially if you put in a lot of work for it, that's totally fine, right? Like, if I run 40 Waycrest Manors and I don't have a branch, I should have a way to buy my branch. I shouldn't have to run 40 more. You know what I mean? It's annoying whenever they have these drops and it's on like a really big loot table, and then you just can never get it. But let me know how you feel about this. I think pretty much everyone likes the Dinar thing, though. It's pretty good. I always like in the Wowhead comments, you always see people being like, what the fuck is a Dinar? Jet says, at least halfway point in the season, there should be a way to get what you want. Yeah, I mean, it's just annoying to not get what you want if you put in the work. I'm not asking for it to be free. I'm not asking to just get it, for doing nothing, right? But just give us a path. Give us a way to acquire the item guaranteed. That's all I want. Are priests banned from Mythic Plus in Season 5? Yes, that is confirmed. Season 5, priests are hard banned. Yep. It's because they have powered fortitude, they have power infusion, they have mass dispel. These are all just too strong. You gotta just ban them. I think this is Wowhead's April Fool's post. They said all weekly affixes have been removed. Hallelujah. That's a great change. Not real, but great. Priest are banned. Rogue, Shroud of Concealment now has no cooldown and infinite duration. Okay, this one also would be Pog if it was real. Items no longer drop from Mythic Plus chests at the end. Instead, players loot a new currency that allows them to buy dungeon loot off a vendor. You know what's funny is, like, once upon a time, that's how the game worked. Like, if you go back to, like, TBC or, like, Wrath of the Lich King, you could get emblems, and you could turn those emblems in for items. It wasn't necessarily the same shit that dropped in the dungeon, but you could get items that were really good that were alternatives to those. And it was really good. I like that system. But for some reason, Blizzard thought, you know what? Nah. We like gambling. Gambling only. You have to gamble to get all your gear. If it doesn't drop, it doesn't drop, right? Which is fine. I mean, there's virtue in that too, but I just think that having a little bit more deterministic loot is probably a good idea. But who knows? Maybe it's like players play less or something. I don't know why they do it. It doesn't really make sense otherwise. People obviously like having a little bit more agency in getting their loot, so I don't really see a reason why they wouldn't do it unless there was a good reason. This is April Fool's, yeah. We're covering the April Fool's stuff so that you don't get fooled, right? That's the goal. No fooling. Could give us checkpoints throughout season 6 weeks, 12 weeks, etc. Yeah. They also said legendaries are now 100% drop rate. Fires of Outland CCG mount now is a rare chance to drop at the end of any Mythic Plus dungeon. Wow, people would be really mad if this happened. Dude, all the people who bought their Swift Spectral Tigers would be so upset. You know what's funny is I don't have this mount, but I was actually offered it back in Cataclysm. I had 12 million gold because I was doing the Obsidian Shuffle. And which is, by the way, it's a great way to make gold. If you're playing Cataclysm Classic, just Google the Obsidian Shuffle. Google that shit. It's a good way to just print money. Anyways, so I was very rich at the time. I wasn't really raiding all too much, but I was printing gold in the auction house, doing the Obsidian Shuffle. And I had someone offer me a Swift Spectral Tiger for 768k. And I had 12 million gold, and I was like, yeah, nah. I don't really care about that mount. It would just be a +1 for me. I wouldn't use it. I kind of regret it now because I feel like it's like way more expensive. I could have just held on to the item. I don't think I would have used it. I don't regret not having the mount. I regret not buying it and reselling it later. That's what I regret. Because, man, I could have made some gold if I just bought that thing and just held on to it. Could have made bukus of gold for free. So easy. But, yeah, what can you do? You can't see the future. They also said some old dungeons are back. Yeah, this is all fake, obviously. But level 7, level 4 affix weekly removed. Seasonal affix return. 2 fan favorite weekly affixes, Bolster and Sanguine, will return as seasonal and be present in every key for the season. Yeah, that would actually be a nightmare. Never mind. I don't like these changes. I've changed my mind. This isn't good. All the good up here is negated by this change. I think I'll pass. So yeah, season 4 is coming close. I mean, we don't know exactly when it will be. I'll tell you this. I think it's going to be after the 14th of next month. If I had to throw out a date for when season 4 is probably hitting, I would probably say the 21st or maybe the 28th. I hope it's the 21st though. It'd be really good if it was on the 21st. But I've been running some keys. So I just wanted to quickly show you some of this, some of the action here, because we've been running the keys and having a good time doing it. So I put together this quick video, just kind of showing some of those keys off. Let's mute this real quick. Just to kind of give you an idea of what you're looking at in the season. So yeah, Algathar Academy is our first one, and we're just going to scrub through to the first pull here. Is it a Sunday though? Hold on. No, oh, sorry. April 21st would be a Sunday. Yeah, no. I mean, the 23rd. That's what I meant. Yeah, so big pulls happening here. Devastation, as you know, on PTR, like, well, even on live, it's not just PTR. Devastation has like massive aggro issues, so I'm gonna wait like a while here before I hit. Let all these guys get hit by a couple AoEs. Just chilling. Okay, here I go. Boom. Watch this dev damage. So I just entered combat, right? Watch this again. Watch the damage meter right here. This is crazy. So right now, the Demon Hunter tank is pulling everything together. The dotters have already started dotting. Right, you got Druid damage in here. You got Priest damage. Watch how I fly up the meters. Boom. That first pyre alone from the Dragon Rage did 10 million damage. On one global. Dev damage is sick. Okay, and then we hit the tip to scales fire breath, tip to scales. I should have saved this tip to scales for a second fire breath, but I wanted to just get it out right away so it would be up for the next time my cooldowns come up, which is on the boss. Just wanted to line this up a little bit. So I sent it right away with the Eternity Surge, which is not something you always want to do. It's just, you know, situational. Obviously flipping out those pyres. The Druid is coming up here too. I think the Shadow Priest is still dotting at this point. Okay, yeah, now he's going ham. He just hit me with the PI, so now it's time. I think he may have spent too long getting his dots up there. But yeah, as you can see, the dev damage is just super duper good. I mean, boomy damage is not bad either. This is one of the highest damage specs I've seen against dev evoker on the pull like this. It's nothing to sneeze at. But yeah, we end the pull, I think, at like 1.5. Let's see. Skip ahead here. Oh, 1.34. Okay. So yeah, that was a pretty good pull. We do the boss here. Moving on. We had a little mishap. Okay, so here's another AoE pull coming up here. What trinkets? Oh, I wasn't even using the right trinkets. I was using spoils, and I was using Whispers of the Incarnate, which I think is actually worse than running Whispers of the Incarnate and then the Fractured Heart. You know the Fractured Heart trinket? That thing is apparently insane. Did I get fooled today? Yes, I did I got fooled bigly. Hold on, let me show you how I got fooled. You have to see it for yourself. So, I don't know how you guys feel about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. It's here it is. This is what got me so good. So yeah, there's a new part to JoJo that's going to be coming out hopefully soon called Steel Ball Run. It's like my favorite in the entire JoJo franchise. So like this is one I'm looking forward to big time. And they just finished the one before this. That one has an anime. This one hasn't been announced yet though. And I saw this and I was like, yo, I sent this to my friend immediately. I was like, yo, look at this. Cause I sent him like we both read the manga for Steel Ball Run and it's incredible. It's like the best JoJo part. And JoJo's is really good. So like I was super hyped for this. And then I remembered, dude, it's April 1st. What am I doing, man? I can't be falling for this shit. I got so fooled. But I mean, it looks real, right? Like this looks hella real. They did a really good job on this one, but man, they got me so good. I linked it to my friends and now I'm like, I hate April Fools. Down bigly. But yeah, I don't know if y'all got fooled. Nothing else has fooled me. The only thing that's fooled me so far is the JoJo. But it got me good. Got me real good. You fell for the $20 Mog set? Wait, what? Is it this? Oh, this isn't real? Wait, what the fuck? Why is this? Wait, is this a joke? Wait, but there's actually a buy now button. They did a really good job with this. I mean, it looks like shit. Like I would actually... It's not a joke. Okay, so this isn't a joke then. Dude, it's so hard to tell, man. April Fool's is a shit holiday. I'm just getting fooled on cooldown, man. No jokes allowed. Remove all jokes. No jokes today, guys. Nothing but the truth. Oh, speaking of the truth, have y'all turned into ducks yet? If you haven't turned into a duck yet, make sure that you go do your duck stuff. There's a new toy on live where once you complete your Noble Garden crap, I'm going to log in real quick. But yeah, once you do your Noble Garden, you can turn in your eggs and you can get a duck pet, which is really cool. He's super cute. And then if you do the quest, you get a duck skin that you can turn into. You can drop an egg on the ground. This is no April Fool's. This is real. You can drop an egg. And then people click the egg and they can choose their duck outfit. So yeah, we're going to be ducks. It's great. Now you don't have to do council to be a duck. You can just use your toy. But yeah, the best spot, dude, I'm going to show you all the technology, okay? You ready for the tech? This is huge tech, okay? I'm sharing it with you. So you can use it too. So what you do is you stand right where I'm standing, okay? And then you bind your interact key. Wait, what? Apparently I lost my slots. Okay, we'll have to put that back later. Yeah, anyway, so you stand in this exact spot right here. And you have two ducks in front of you, or two eggs in front of you. As a little duck, I have the costume on. I'm gonna turn it off. Yeah, so you stand right here, and then you bind this key right here. It's called interact with target. This one. You bind this key, okay? And then you stand in this exact spot. And then you can just idly press your interact button. And as soon as the eggs spawn, you'll instantly start looting them because you have the interact button, right? And you can make a macro to open up your eggs. I'm just opening them up manually, but you can use a macro for that. But so the amount of eggs that spawn, it's actually a little variable. It depends on how many people are in the zone, I think. So like right now, it looks like I'm in a bad phase, so I'm not really seeing other people. We're not really having eggs spawn. We got a couple people here, but anyways, you can either do this with the interact button, and it's super lazy, or you can click this one, click right here, click right here. There's 3 eggs that spawn right in the spot. This is in Razor Hill. It's right here outside the inn. See that? Again, it depends on how many people are here for like the spawn. So right now it looks like it's really slow. Earlier today, this thing was popping, dude. There's so many people online. I was just standing here in this exact spot and I was just spamming C. And look, I have 250 eggs. And on top of that, I already bought my little duck and I bought another toy. Oh, here's an egg. It just spawns. See? You just instantly loot it as soon as it spawns. I think I've gathered like 800 eggs so far. No cap. But yeah, it's really slow in this one. I would definitely, if I was going to farm eggs for a little bit longer, which I'm not going to, I was just showing off the spot. I would look for a phase where people are killing the boss so that hopefully you can be in a group where like there's a ton of people here. If there's like 1 million people in this town and like camping the rare, then the eggs spawn like instantly. Wait, there's 4 under 1 brazier? Where is that? Is there a better spot? Obviously, it's faster though if to respawn slower to just like run around and collect them. But the interact key is really nice for collecting eggs because you can just that's still technology, right? You just bind the interact key and then if you like run up to an egg like this, right, you can just press the key and you just loot it. See, like so. Makes it much faster to loot the eggs. Right in front of me. Yeah, there's one under this brazier too. So you just click the interact, boom, you collect it. Real easy like that. Anyways, this is the goated spot. 1, 2, 3, 4, right here. But anyways, so we're gonna be doing the Warcraft Workshop. This is a new podcast I'm doing with Jedit, and we are actually having Automatic Jack on today. I do need to do a little setup for that call just to make sure the audio and the video is all set up for the episode. I'm going to stream it here on Twitch. Chat, I'll need you as well because we're going to be asking questions to y'all. So make sure you include your questions. And then once it's done, the episode will be on YouTube. I'm going to make a community post with a link to the episode. So that's where it's going to be hosted. And then in the future, we're going to be doing more. So this is just episode 1. Episode 1 is about healing. We're going to try to do kind of like a different theme every episode. I think episode 2, I haven't confirmed the host yet, but I do have a couple options. I think we're probably going to do a PvP episode as our episode 2. So that will be like not next Monday, but the Monday after, because next Monday is like eclipse time. There's a big ass eclipse that's happening here. So I won't be here for that. I will live stream the eclipse though. If you want to watch the eclipse, I will be live streaming that. So you can check it out on my channel here. A little bit of a different stream. It'll be an IRL stream. Yeah. So if you want to join me for totality, I am in the complete totality. I can't really get closer to it. Honestly, I am right underneath that sucker. And hopefully the skies will be clear. That's the only thing I'm worried about is that the skies, if they aren't clear, it may be a bit of a sag moment, but we're gonna cross our fingers. Anyways, we're gonna go to the start screen and we'll be starting up the podcast here in about 10 minutes. Okay, so I'll see you on the other side here. We'll put up the timer now. All right, see y'all. Okay. And we'll turn these on. Okay. Get these set up just right.
It's working, actually.
Okay. All right. So yeah, let's kick this thing off. So was just doing a little adjustment there. Yeah, the sound is now enabled. You should be able to hear me just right. So let's start with some introductions. So first off, what is the show? Because this is our first episode. So Jedit, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about Warcraft Workshop?
Yeah. So, all right. Hi, everyone. Welcome. This is the first episode of the Warcraft Workshop podcast. My name is Jedith, and I'm here with my co-host Preheat. And today we're going to be talking to the one and only Automatic Jack. So yeah, we'll just start with some introduction. Sorry. My name is Jedith, like I said. I mostly make Havoc Demon Hunter content. That's probably what I'm most known for. But I've been playing, World of Warcraft since the Burning Crusade. It's been a long time. And actually, I've been playing MMOs, now that I think about it, for probably over 3/4 of my entire life. I played EverQuest for like 10 years before WoW. So yeah, wow, that's pretty bad to think about. I don't know why I even mentioned that. Let's move on from that. Let's move on to Preheat.
Was that a brag or a confession?
Yeah.
I don't know. Probably both. Let's Preheat. Let's hear from you.
Yeah, so my name is Preheat. I used to raid World First. Now I just mainly do content creation and also guides for Wowhead, video content, that sort of stuff. And always looking to get better at the game, improve my skills, help other people as well. So that's kind of what I'm about. Primarily play mage, and also lately, well, in this expansion, I've been kind of doing the evoker thing. Really leaned into that. Been loving evoker. Fantastic to have as an alt. You can get one really easily. Just slam it. Comes almost leveled up all the way. So just go ahead and hit that up. Yeah, my plug is for evoker. That's it. You should make one. Anyways, let's go ahead and bring it over to you, Jack.
Hey everyone, I'm Jack. I've been healing in WoW for something like 10 years now. Doing both high-end M+ and cutting-edge rating pretty much ever since their inception, really. I've been cutting-edge rating since end of Mist Pandaria, basically. Primarily focusing on priests, but I play all the healers, and recently been getting all the healers ready for Season 4 and all the prep around Fated Season. So I'm all over the place on YouTube, Twitch, TikTok, and all of that.
Awesome. Well, that's actually one of our first topics here, because we are going to be discussing Season 4. Now, of course, on the PTR, there isn't really much to do aside from just hop into Mythic Plus. But we do have some vendors. We do have some quests that we can kind of glean a little bit about how Season 4 is going to work based on what we've seen so far on the PTR. But I want to talk about right away. So we saw that there was a new currency added. It was a bit of a question like how you would end up getting this currency. But now it seems that there's an Emissary of War quest currently on the PTR, so you can go grab your bullion. This is what they're calling the dinar this time. So for those of you who aren't aware, basically this is a currency that allows you to acquire an item of your choosing. It's a deterministic way to get a piece of loot. So if you get 2 of these, you can trade them into a vendor and you can get an item of your choosing, trinket, weapon, whatever it is. If there's any special item from the raid, you can get your hands on it, or from the dungeon for that matter. But this one is actually weekly quests, which I think is really interesting. So, Jack, what do you think about the dinar system? Like, how did you feel about it in Shadowlands Season 4?
It was pretty much the only way I was able to get the ring that was pretty specific back in Sepulchre.
Yeah.
That was not dropping for me at all during the regular Sepulchre raid. So yeah, I mean, always having some form of deterministic system to get those items, I think, is huge. I'm kind of interested in how many bullions we're going to be picking up
Definitely.
this season, because there's also having the competition for cosmetics. But just a general idea, I love this sort of system in general. I think we're probably going to get a lot of the bullions or dinars really fast this season, because it isn't going to be like a full length season.
Hope so.
But I hope that they also keep this in mind, like later on for next expansion, because even if they gave you like 1 dinar after 2 months of a season or something like that, and they're like, oh, you've been playing since the very beginning of the season, here's your dinar so you can finally get that one item. I can't tell you how many people I've seen who are still missing one specific piece or one specific trinket that just won't drop for them.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that bothers me about the current system for WoW when it comes to loot is, not having that deterministic aspect where you can run like 40 Waycrests, not get a branch, right? That's just ridiculous. If you put in the work for it, I mean, it shouldn't be free. Like, you should have to put in a certain amount of work. But if you do that, you should be able to kind of game the system and get the item that you're trying to chase. And, in the past, like, we had stuff like this too. Like, back in the Burning Crusade, the Wrath of the Lich King, like, we had an Emblem Fender. So I think it really makes sense for, like, the game, not just in Season 4. But Blizzard seems to be a little stubborn about giving us the fat loot. So what can you do? What about you, Jedith?
It was especially tough this season, even last season too, as a Havoc Demon Hunter, because we were, hunting the double time weapon from Dawn of the Infinites.
Yep.
And we needed 2 of them. And the worst part is we couldn't get funneled that loot from anyone else because it's a warglaive and only demon hunters can loot it. So yeah, deterministic loot is something that I've been really hoping for. My concern though is, like you said, how many we're actually going to get of these bullions, because the current items, they cost, you said 2, right?
Yeah.
They cost 2. Then there's the mount, which is 3 if you decide to go that route.
If you don't have it, yeah.
Yeah. And then there's the just the transmog items, which I believe were also 2, or were they 1?
No, they're the transmogs are 1. That's one important distinction since last time. I don't know what you did with your dinars last time. On my evoker, I straight bought the gavel because I was like, you know what, I want this mog and I'm not going to be able to get it otherwise, so I'm just going to send that. But yeah, they do have the 1 for the transmog now, which is actually kind of cool that you don't have to pay full price there.
And this quest is the Emissary of War quest. So is it going to be every weekly quest is giving these 2, or is it just because this quest comes up every 6 weeks or something like that? So I'm curious to see how the other ways we're going to actually obtain these things.
Yeah, also I think there is a rotation. So you have like your pet battles, you have like your time walking. This one obviously is replacing the loot that used to give you a random dungeon piece. So that is probably the biggest question. We don't have answers yet. We just have to wait and see what they end up going with. But hopefully we'll get more information soon on these. Would like to see other quests also giving the bullions, but if not, there's got to be another way to acquire them, right? Maybe this is just the cherry on top. But yeah, that's fantastic news. Definitely like the loot to be a little bit more deterministic. There's another thing we want to talk about here. So Noble Garden has begun. And for those of you who like collection, I'm sure you already know this because you've probably been online clicking eggs and killing the duck over and over again for this thing. But it appears that Blizzard has decided to add another 1% mount to the game on like a seasonal thing. So
great.
Yeah, what are our thoughts on that, Jack? Like, do you chase this mount? Is this something you're going for?
My chat mentioned something like that today, but I didn't even look into what it was. So what is the mount? It depends on what the mount is, because it's going to be a dragon riding mount next expansion.
So it's a magic carpet that has little eggs on its tassels.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That's the mount. It's a 1% drop.
It would fly. That'd be kind of cool to have a flying carpet, but dragon riding.
Oh, there is. Oh, I should include this too. So like, this is kind of important. There is a duck on this mount. If you look very closely at the pillow that's behind the character in the model, you'll notice a pink little duck who is sitting right next to the pillow. So honestly, the mount itself is okay, but the duck, now I'm sold. I'm like, I got to get my hands on this thing. But it appears you can only get it the chance on this mount only if you're max level. Like wait, no, it's not max level. It says
60 to 70.
60. Okay, yeah. So you can cheese it with alts, but obviously you have to have the alts be somewhat leveled up. Did you have something else to say on that, Jedith?
Yeah, you can cheese it as much as you could cheese the love rocket.
Exactly.
Not much, right? You can try your best. You can go through your arsenal of characters, but there's no guarantees.
Yeah, I mean, like something like this, I'm totally fine with having as a 1% drop rate. The place where I start to get a little bit annoyed is the limited time thing. Personally, I don't really care too much because I'm not like a big collector, but I know people who are, and it seems like a lot of extra stress for them. And obviously, they could just choose not to do that. But I think the community has been pretty outspoken about how they feel about these 1% drop rates on these seasonal things. With like Plunderstorm, right? Like it's a grind, but you get it. Like you do get it, right? Like you're guaranteed to get it. I know you made a tweet about this, Jack. That's why I'm mentioning that part. Yeah, dude. Okay, so I looked at the replies on that tweet. Man, there were some takes on there. Why don't you tell us a little bit give us some context. What was this tweet that you put out about Plunderstorm?
So the larger point I was trying to make was that if things are bringing you great amounts of unhappiness, then maybe, the reward for those things is not worth the effort for those things.
Correct.
And to illustrate that, I was like, oh, here's like this PvP Mog. Looks good. It's time sensitive. I don't really like PvP, not really good at PvP, so I don't want to go do this. And so I don't. And like that was the point.
Right.
And then there were a lot of people who but the funniest part was when people thought I wanted help getting the title.
Okay.
And I was like, no, that's not my point. That's not my point. But yeah, and basically it
I mean this
somehow exploded.
Yeah, this seems like pretty obvious to me, right? Like if you are like feeling like you're being tortured just for like pixels, maybe the video game isn't giving you the enjoyment it should in that situation. Maybe you should reassess your priorities there.
Yeah, well, and also being a collector, if you want to collect everything, then it also means you're going to naturally sign up for something in a game that you don't want to do. And
right.
So is it the pride of collecting it? I mean, like Annie Fuchsia, for example, is beating the game. Or Fuchsia, but she's beating the game. She's on every achievement out there.
Yep.
And that's really hard to do. And you have to be very good at the game to be able to do it. But you also probably have to do things you really don't want to do.
That's right.
At that point in time for that achievement, And if it's getting to the point, like it was really spurred from having both like people I've seen in like my own stream or forums or Wowhead or Twitter or whatever talking about like how much anguish it brings them to do, Plunderstorm stuff. And I'm like,
yeah.
It's just pirate mogs, and then true to form, the latest trading post has plenty of extra pirate mogs.
Right.
So,
yeah, it's been fun.
The effort that you have to put in isn't outweighing like what the goal is, then you just don't want it enough. If you want it enough, you'll put the effort in, and you'll get the reward that you want. If you don't want it, you don't put the effort in.
And
that's just how it is.
And it's fine, in my opinion, to have things that not everyone gets. Right? It's an MMO. Yeah. That's part of it. There should be things that are for special interests, right? It's part of the.
And I think that's a good point too, because remember how they brought back Tier 3, and you can get it from the black market auction house, but then they've made it kind of easier, quote unquote. It's still really expensive by going through the crafted system to make it. And a lot of people were like, "This is great that they're getting rid of exclusivity, but you still have a challenge to be able to go get it."
Right.
And in favor of that, I think that's a great idea. But they could probably also do that with Plunderstorm later on down the line, because if I remember correctly, this month's trading post has the Dreadwake, which was a BFA 6-month exclusive sub thing to get this boat mount. And hey, now it's going to be out there for everyone. And so I don't see why they can't do that same thing, where people maybe have an expectation that a couple of years down the line, this will be available in some other form. I really hate doing this activity to get this reward, so I won't do it.
That's right. Yeah, you just got to make an assessment. Each person is going to have their own tolerance for things that they don't enjoy. But, if you're a real grinder, if you're one of those people, then good luck. Because I'll tell you this, it doesn't seem like Blizzard likes you very much with the achievements they're making you do sometimes. I mean, come on. Some of this stuff is outrageous. But yeah, so obviously another 1% mount. I'm sure Artemisia is going to be excited about this one. I've already seen some takes on Twitter about people complaining that the mount collectors are already out in droves complaining about this one.
Maybe
But
that's why they're doing it. Sorry.
I mean,
Maybe that's
yeah,
why
they
they're
want
doing it,
people to
'cause
play.
they want people to play, but they made it easier for people to get the love rocket, I thought. And so
They
they're
did.
like, now there's a 0.1% other grind to do.
Yeah. Here you go. The carrot on the stick. It's always there.
There's always got to be a carrot.
So speaking about other new stuff, so obviously we were already talking about season 4 and kind of the new systems that they're going to be adding in there, but I'm curious to ask y'all what sort of prep you're doing for season 4. So Jack, what sort of stuff are you looking into for season 4? Obviously you're streaming the content, so you're doing some practice or some I guess limit testing in there, but what does your prep look like?
So thus far I've been playing, I've gotten all my characters, all my healers prepped on PTR, got the trinkets, got the items I need, all of that. And I'm doing somewhere between 4 and 5 dungeons each to test how the healers are feeling. Eventually I'll get through all the dungeons and all the healers, but I've just been trying to rapid fire, get some early impressions on them. But the plan for me is to play through all the healers and dungeons, and I'm very likely to bring 3 healers and actually maintain them throughout season 4. Maybe bring others if they're also still fun.
Yeah.
But just see which ones are feeling powerful, feel good to play, feel fun to play, and make my decisions for what I want to play in addition to Priest.
Yeah, I'll tell you from my perspective. I know we did some keys the other day on season 4 PTR, but I'm just trying to get a feel for where things are in terms of my damage as evoker, and then I'm also prepping characters on live because I know I'm going to want to have some alts, right? And season 4, you know, with this bullion system, the great part about that is with it deterministic is that I can get the item I'm chasing, right? There's no, I don't have to go through the pain like you were talking about, Jedith, about doing the dungeon like, you know, X amount of times to get 2 of the weapon, right? Like I can just buy them.
Yep.
So that's obviously a big part of it. But I feel like if you're playing a class right now, like evoker or any strength user, like you're going to want to get your hands on the legendary because there is an upgrade item for the legendary that is confirmed on season 4. We don't know how we're getting it yet, but we do know that one of the ways to acquire the item is going to be through that dinar NPC. Basically, you can buy this thing called the Scales of Awakening. I'm looking for the article on it, but yeah, definitely try to get your hands on the legendary as soon as you can. I recently actually just swapped to Ace, and I'm having to refarm those 2 things. But yeah, what about you, Jedith? What are you doing for your season 4 prep?
Well, prep is probably not the right word because I am the biggest one trick you'll ever find. I don't have any alts. I don't play alts. I try to. I say I'm going to. I'll level them up, and then I just never play them. But for Havoc, I mean, I've been on the PTR testing things. It's kind of still pretty early because there haven't been any Havoc class changes or tuning or anything.
Right.
We've been doing some just pug keys over on the PTR. I guess the biggest thing for me is, you know, testing the dungeons and sort of experiencing all the changes that they've made to those dungeons in particular.
Yeah.
I was in Halls of Infusion the other night, and it felt a lot better to play. They made some really good changes in there. So yeah, it's more so just like, I don't know, just getting the Havoc ready. I think for season 4, I'm probably not going to go as hard as I did in the previous seasons.
Yeah.
Just doesn't have the same sort of luster and excitement for me. I might take the time to maybe swap between a couple games. I know there's going to be a Final Fantasy 14 expansion coming out that I might dip my toes into. So yeah.
Yeah, I gotta say, definitely excited about season 4, but I would always like new content, right? I feel like new content would always just be preferred there. And then so we may not see it until pre-patch. There's a chance we see it on the pre-patch, but hero talents. So Jack, I want to get your opinion because I know Oracle came out and man, was that a stinker. It looks like they're going back to the drawing board on it. What was your first impression? What did you what first came to mind whenever you first saw those Oracle hero talents?
Just oh no.
Oh no.
You know, a little sinking feeling in your stomach because in a word, it changed up power infusion and split it into multiple parts.
Right.
And then required you to juggle how you would utilize the buff in addition to everything else you're already doing. And you can kind of have like gameplay space when you could add on some extra difficulty if you were playing Holy Priest, because it can have some more downtime. There's some moments where Disc can have some downtime, especially in raiding, where it would have worked out, but it was also just extra clutter and extra, you know, cognitive load to add to the table for playing the spec as is. And so yeah, I'm thrilled. I was very negative on hero talents as a whole around the time that Oracle was out, and we also had like Lightsmith Paladin, which I also really don't like. But the latest updates they've had for like Conduit of the Celestials for Monk, Flame Shaper Evoker,
Yeah.
those actually left, or Herald of the Sun Paladin, those all left me with pretty positive feelings. So I'm looking forward to them cooking up some new ideas for Priest.
Do you feel like maybe the classes that got them early kind of got a little screwed and now they're maybe like on track, or is it just maybe that they came in with like a really bad concept for the starter on this, with the power infusion being like the primary focus?
I wouldn't be surprised if they started with some of the difficult ones first. Of how do you have, like, what is it to have an ancestor, or what is it for shamans, Farsi or shaman? Like, what is it going to mean to connect with your ancestors or something along those lines? I guess that's kind of the perspective that it was coming into, was maybe do the hard ones first. But since then, they've been on a roll. Like the
Yeah.
Farseer stuff's kind of lame, but it's not like it's more of a neutral effect rather than a positive or a negative. And I think that's fine. If at worst it's a neutral effect, doesn't really feel like it changes your gameplay, I think that's a good thing in general.
Yeah. So like the initial promise, it seems, was like, we're gonna have these things, they're gonna make your damage go up by like, let's say 25%, something in that ballpark. You'll get more throughput. But the main thing is just that like we don't want to make your playstyle too much different. We just want to give it a lot more flavor. And I feel like some of the hero talents definitely have like super nailed that, right? Like you're saying, like the Flame Shaper one, that one's shared with Dev, and it's looking really cool. A lot of burst AoE, just what Devastation needs, more burst AoE. As such, it's such an easy time with threat, you know. So it's a good thing that they're getting more of that. And no ways to deal with threat. But you know, for Jedith, your character, right? You're a demon hunter. You already are a demon that can fly around and shoot lasers out of your eyes. Like, where do they go to from there? Like, how can they make your class have a cool hero talent that like changes things up when you're already so, I guess, fantasy rich?
Well, I think what they could do is make a build that allows you to lean into that more. The one that we got so far is very like glaive oriented. Your throw glaive gets replaced with this other ability. And the first problem that I saw with it was that there's a misconception on how Havoc works in this day and age, for lack of a better term. Back in BFA, Havoc used to be super simple. It was the class and spec that everyone just kind of defaulted to when they wanted to semi AFK and play the game. Then over time, it grew to be more complex. The rotation is pretty involved. There's a lot of short buff windows. And now with this hero talent tree, it's kind of just adding on to that. It's adding another very short buff window that you have to try to play into.
Right.
And truthfully, it just kind of muddies up an already muddy rotation. So with this one, we're going to have to see. But I think the next one that we're going to get is called Felscard. Everyone's prediction for that is going to be, it is already that it's going to be more leaning towards demon form, using some of the more like fell abilities like eye beam, maybe fell barrage, immolation aura, stuff like that. So we're all really looking forward to hopefully getting a talent tree that's just a bit simpler, that we don't really have to think too much into.
Yeah, one thing else also I found kind of interesting about Oracle whenever it first came out is the idea of having almost, I mean, obviously you're still a healer, like it's still a healing role, but incorporating more support aspects into that role. And I'd like to get your opinion on this, Jack. Like, whenever it comes to your role as a healer, like in a dungeon, right? So you're in there, maybe you have an augmentation, maybe you don't, but like there's this weird gray area where like you're having to damage. That's a given, right? As a healer, you're also, your job is to keep people alive. And now we're adding on like this other layer of like, now you're also supportive as well. Like, do you feel like the support role in general should be like a complement to healing, or do you feel like they should maybe be intertwined, or maybe you just don't want like nothing, you don't want anything to do with it?
I think you naturally need to be able to find different ways to engage DPS in the supportive aspects of M plus, because if all of the weight gets put on whoever does the least amount of damage, then that's just naturally going to end up being a problem. Like,
Right.
if tanks, for example, if they just sheared all of like the crowd control from tanks, and they also made them do 0 damage, and there's been times where tanks did do like 0 damage, you could easily see a world where there's going to be a lot of emphasis on that spec, that person doing the support aspects, support role. But I think in general, what has a lot of healers frustrated with M plus in general this expansion is, yeah, you do get the brunt of all the affixes assigned to you
Yeah.
through things like incorporeal or afflicted. Of course, it's like, what are you going to do on this afflicted week that we have when you have a demon hunter and a warlock and a warrior? They don't do anything to help you. And so, one, it makes you not want to bring those classes on those weeks, but for another, it puts the responsibility onto those healers to deal with all of it. And so not having any sort of way to actively engage DPS in it or push them to actually engage with it actively brings all this additional responsibility on somebody else who is also contending with the crazy burst damage one-shot stuff that I've harped on for, the past like 14 months or something like that.
Would you say you're overworked as a healer, or do you feel like there's enough work for you to keep it fresh and interesting? Or like where I guess are you, like, on the scale from like 1 to 10, like in terms of your mental bandwidth healing, assuming that the affixes aren't terrible, where would you put yourself?
I think that healers have plenty to keep them engaged. I
Mhm.
think it is more that healing is really insanely bursty and damage really insanely bursty right now. And so that if you're not having like preemptive healing or split second reactions to bring people up, like I've been doing Algathar Academy again as an
Yeah.
example. There's certain combinations where you're going to have the mana bombs on you that are ticking really heavily and then they, detonate. And then there's also the boss knockback. And so you have to make sure your timing abilities and timing healing to push up their health pool to 100% just as that debuff
It's about to,
expires,
yeah,
but also top them before the pushback happens.
right.
And so there's not a lot of room for using extra globals to deal with affixes at that moment in time. But if you're the only person that can deal with them, then it's the struggle of, do I let the afflicted go off to heal everybody enough? And then I save their lives, but now they're slowed and now they're bitching and moaning, right?
Right.
There's those sort of conflicts that you have on hand. So
Yeah.
I think if healing in general was a little bit slower, I think more people would be accepting of it. But this is the world we live in. And there's a lot of responsibility for healers.
Yeah, Veximus seems especially punishing too. I mean, that boss is crazy. Like you'll press your defensive. I mean, God help a DPS who doesn't press their defenses on that boss. It's so
They're dead.
over for you. You're so
They're
dead.
dead.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
even like with your defensives up, I mean, like the last tick of that bomb is insane because it ticks at the same time the bomb explodes. And then there's that one lineup where you also get the knockback at the same time, right? The infamous one from season 1. If you played back then, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And it's like I just feel like it's a bit much on that boss. That dungeon is really fun. Don't get me wrong. I love Algathar Academy. Love making big numbers, right? The
Right.
tree boss and the big pull right before Veximus, both fantastic pulls. But yeah, I do feel like maybe it's a little out of control when it comes to the amount of work you have to do and the amount of burst and setup. And I just don't know how that key is going to scale up. I mean, maybe they'll look into it again, but it just feels really rough to me personally. And that's just as a DPS. Like, I'm not even really having to think about it too much.
Yeah, and part of it is, Dragonfly talents have made hybrid specs even better at off healing.
Yeah.
It's also brought a ridiculous amount of like defensive bloat. This is something Thune and other healer players talked about ad nauseum, really, is that there's so many defensives that people are juggling between and should be using. And so then Blizzard's like, oh, well, everybody has these defensives. Let's tune the content around people using the defensives. And then you get really swingy environments and in dungeons. You and I saw that when we were doing PTR testing before, where it's like, people are using their defensives or people are not using their defensives. And you can quickly see a split second moment in time that person's just dead.
Yeah. So,
So
oh, go ahead, Jedith.
I was going to ask, I have a question for Jack, and this is really I'm curious to hear the answer on this. Do you think, as a healer, playing with an evoker takes some of that weight off your shoulders as a healer? Or do you go into that situation almost anticipating playing with another affix? Because if that evoker, the augmentation evoker, isn't, pressing their group-wide cooldowns when they need to be, ultimately it just makes your job harder.
Yeah.
What's your stance on that?
Unless I know the aug. But if I queue up into a random group, then usually the defensives are going on to the aug. The preparation is
So do you avoid playing with pug augs? Is that kind of something you
sometimes, yeah, sometimes.
I'll say
I'm
like
not even a healer, and I avoid it.
yeah, like
Yeah.
even as an aug, like I don't trust augs, man. Like I don't want to. Okay, I don't want to stereotype too much. All right, but like there is a stereotype. We have to talk about it. I mean, it's the elephant in the room, right? It's the aug who like doesn't know what they're doing at all. They're there, and it's like you're carrying them, right? The carry aug, the floor
Yeah.
aug, so to speak.
Well, that's the thing is
And
like when played right,
it's
it
insane.
is like a huge active help. Like I've
Yeah.
had maybe from Liquid play AUG in a group with me, and I'm like, this is like a miracle. This is fantastic. Like every 45 seconds, we're getting rescue shields at optimal timings, like perfect moments. My character doesn't move anywhere. Like it was in like season 2 where there was times where I'd be getting like the prescience at really high healing moments. It would
Mhm.
help out a ton. And then yeah, there's other times where people are just doing I don't know what
Floor
and
auging.
it makes the job a lot harder. 100%.
Yeah, it is definitely weird because that class, like in its design, it's either going to be overpowered or bad, right? Like there's really like the margin for error on it, since it's like force multiplying, as they like to call it, is just like it's either insane or it's not, and more often than not it's not, right? It's not great. So I don't know what their I guess idea for augmentation is moving into the War Within, but I'll definitely tell you this, like as someone who has played it quite a lot, like I got title in my aug last season. I definitely felt like I had more agency as an aug than I've ever felt like as a DPS. And I'm sure like you feel this as a healer, like you have a lot of control over whether you succeed or fail. Like if people make mistakes, you can like make up for some of those mistakes to a certain extent. You can kind of carry the group, put them on your back, so to speak. And as aug, I feel like I can do that. Like I have the ability to do the stops. I can be a shot caller. I can put out the aspects favor to give people more health, the rescue shields, like all that stuff. It's baked into the kit. You can use it, but the question is like, am I finding satisfaction in it? And I know that's obviously like, it's hard to say, like everyone's got a different picture of what they find satisfying in the game. But like for me, I feel like I'm kind of even still being carried even in that situation, right? Like there's just something about it. I don't know. Anyways, another topic for another day, but I do think that augmentation is, I mean, it's definitely been interesting, but has the experiment succeeded or failed? Jack, I'm putting you on the spot. How do we feel about aug? Pass or fail?
I think it's a fail.
Okay.
Because as you said before, if you're gonna bake all of this extra utility and support into the spec, it gets to the point where it's going to be so good that it's going to be brought to the table. And in natural WoW player fashion, if the meta spec is this, people are going to get invited to that. But it couples with being a little murkier in seeing what success actually looks like.
Right.
What is a good aug? What's a not good aug? Because it's not as immediately available to be known, as opposed to like this guy's a good DPS, this guy's a good healer, whatever. There's a lot of times in the Mythic Plus environment that, hey, we chested the dungeon, so we did it right. When you might have done it right for 22 or 24, but now you're in 26, now you're in 28, and on and on it goes. And so like that's what's kind of led to like the trap aug situation, is that you could just slam dungeons night and day and build up your IO, because eventually you roll the dice enough times, you're going to get the score you need. But that isn't necessarily going to mean that that person is going to be, fully skilled to go for title or fully skilled for whatever key that they're doing. And so I've definitely noticed that sort of the trap aug situation where I'm like, I don't know this person. I don't know if it's going to be a help or a hindrance. And that's just kind of frustrating.
I mean, it's the Fisher Price spec, right? Like you're actually, you have such a
your words.
I'm serious. Like, I mean,
it.
as someone who plays it so much and like and has experienced it so much, like I really do think the more I play it, the more we get into the meta of the game after aug. I've tried like so hard to be positive about it and have like an open mind, but I gotta agree with you. I think it's time to wrap up this experiment. I mean, I don't think it's healthy for the game as a whole, and I hate saying that too, because I like playing it in a lot of scenarios. I know a lot of people enjoy it. Like a lot of my audience enjoys it, right? But I just don't know if the current design is really doing the game a service, or if it's maybe, I feel like it's more of a hindrance at this point, really. Yeah, Jedith, what are your thoughts on aug?
Well, my question was going to be, do you think, do they wrap it up by, reworking how aug works and just make it another DPS, or how do they take that step back? Because it's almost, you're too far gone at this point.
Yeah.
What is the solution?
So, I mean, like they've done this in the past, right? Gladiator Warrior. Remember that one? Remember
Yeah.
Gladiator Warrior? Way back in the day, I'm going to show my age a little bit talking about this, but way back in my day, there was a warrior spec called Gladiator Warrior, right? And it clearly didn't work. And Blizzard said, you know what? We're scrapping it. We're Control Z in that bad boy. And yeah, I mean, I would like AUG to be something different, or maybe for it to just change in other ways. But the current design, where I'll leave it is, I just don't think the current design is working. I don't think it's, the main thing is like you just talked about, Jack, the feedback, right? So this is something I like to talk about all the time, where like as an AUG, you have a really hard time knowing if you're doing good. Like you're really you have no oversight. No one is there to tell you, oh, you did a great job or you didn't, and you can't look at the logs because the logs are bugged, right? The promise that the logs would work just never came through. And then you're like, okay, well now what do I look at? It's my uptime. And even that's a flawed metric because you need to look at like specific instances. No one has time to like look through all this crap after every single dungeon to assess themselves. The game doesn't give you anything back to tell you whether or not you're doing good. And every other class doesn't have this problem. But it's like compounding problem because even if you do good, you never get the feedback for feeling like you did good. You never get the satisfaction of doing good. You never know if you're doing bad. It just feels like you're kind of playing blind, right? And I think a lot of that has to do with how the logs are working, but a lot of it has to do with the entire concept for it as a support role. Just too much of the damage comes from support.
And also how the community sort of perceives it, though.
Yeah.
Because M plus by its nature, like I talked about, is, hey, we chested the dungeon, so I did well. And that's sort of like the end point. Whereas with rating, it's, oh, I didn't do well in this fight. I did do well, because it's extremely like pushed into the community of, okay, you did a raid fight, check the logs on it. But it's not really the same for M plus, where, okay, I've chested the dungeon, so I got score, so I did it right, and that's it. And so people not really, like people who are M plus mains being trained for the dungeon was a success or a fail, and that's the end result, rather than people who are raid focused looking at logs. So I think if logs were more common to be used and to be judged on in M plus, then you might see a bit more. But I mean, that could also start a lot of other problems in the process.
Yeah. I think tanks also kind of suffer the same way, probably a little bit different, but it's kind of like a thankless job as a tank, and you can't really look into like damage as a true indicator as to how well you've done, because that's not necessarily a reflection of your job as a tank. You could look at healing, but again, that's just one portion of it. I think there's just like a general sort of issue in WoW where you don't have the right tools or the metrics to fully judge your performance as a player unless you're a DPS. And even then, just because you're top of the meters doesn't mean you did your job correctly. So I think there's definitely just a generalized sort of issue with WoW in that regard.
But I think it's also by design. I think, with how they've added like raid buffs and supports, PI, like all of these things have been trying to like make the waters murkier so that there is less you're good, you're bad added into it. And so I think that's kind of just Blizzard working, by design, because how do you find who's going to be like the best healer for your raid team? Well, it's tough to be able to see on its own, but you know it when you see it, right? What's the phrase? It's like, I can't explain it to you, but I'll know it when I see it.
Right.
And I've had that experience over, 10 plus years of high end rating, when you know that people are going to be collaborative or want to work together. They're not going to just, push for the meters or just try to pound the meters. And so I think that's happening kind of more in general, which isn't the end of the world, but it's also very tough in a pug environment or in a Mythic Plus environment where it's predominantly pugging, that you're kind of just trying to build a network and try to build relationships with people to keep on running with them again. But the game also really heavily favors this single player mode of just pugging all the time.
Right. So, I mean, I guess this is a good segue. Like, what's your biggest pet peeve whenever you're in a group, like, and you're running with people, and let's say that, like, let's say the group is like okay, right? Like, so you aren't like failing in any spectacular way, but like, what's something that you see it and you're just like, oh man, this is going to be a rough one.
I mean, when I was doing a 0 to hero series, it was just kicks, right?
Kicks, yeah.
I think that's always like the first sort of building block for M plus is just, are people kicking? Are they actively looking to kick, or, occasionally just using their stuns, something along those lines? It's a weird sight to see when you have a Havoc Demon Hunter that isn't using Fell Eruption or something like that.
Right,
Like,
right.
is that the AOE?
You could have used any other class, Jack. You had to say Havoc.
Yeah. But we've always seen that where you're not getting your AOE stun out of like a Demon Hunter or something, and it's just like, oh,
Yes.
that's weird,
Yep.
right?
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
and
I would definitely say it starts with crowd control.
yeah, I it's always like a weird standoff moment, right? Whenever you like do the first big pull, because as a
Mhm.
ranged, I'm gonna use my stop, but I'm not gonna be first, right? I'm gonna wait
Yeah.
for the tank to get his out. I also will usually wait for the melee, depending on what melee spec I'm playing with. And then there's scenarios where it just nothing's getting stopped, and you're like, okay, well, shit,
Yeah.
let me just throw mine now. And then it overlaps, or like the tank like rages because something didn't get stopped and they got hit, and now they're blaming like the rest of the group, and it's like it's really hard to communicate when to stop. And obviously in coordinated groups, it's you like make a plan ahead of time. In pugs, you can't expect that, right? You can never expect to have that sort of coordination. But I do think in general, like I'm kind of looking more to the tanks and the melee to take the lead on that, so to speak, and kind of following their example. But yeah, kicks can definitely take your group down. I mean, a lot of kicks in these season 4 dungeons too. Lots and lots of kicks. But I will say though, like Demon Hunter actually has like a pretty big advantage there, like the Demon Hunter tank spec, because they can just do so many stops. They have all that power. But aside from like kicks and interrupts, stops like that, let's say you're in a group and you're like with a mage. Mages are like notorious for this, right? Like just not pressing their defensives. Like, is this something that like you immediately see and you're like, this mage? Or like, I guess what would be your like first impression if you're like running a group with someone new and they didn't pop something for like a big damage event?
It's always alter time. So it's that is just like the one button that mages don't use. It's always alter time.
Such a strong button too. Such a strong button.
If I play Holy Priest, right, most of my healing is single target. So I'm going to heal this person, then this person, then this person. I don't really push up health pools all together at the same time. And so what you have to do is you set priorities for healing the most vulnerable people. And then at higher keys, especially if you're pugging, no voice, whatever, you infer that somebody is going to use this defensive, then this defensive, then this defensive. And, for a mage, it might be in any of the orders, but you're going to assume, okay, they're going to use a defensive here. I'm going to bomb healing into the evoker, or the aug, or something like that, right? Or myself, because it'll be very squishy. And so when you have the expectation or hope at higher keys that somebody is going to make a move for a defensive or is going to use it, and then they don't, then that drastically throws off your experience. And so I would say this expansion is also really frustrating because you'll see the best players in the world running without healers because they're making such amazing optimal use of their defensives to deal with the crazy burst damage.
Yeah.
And so the game really rewards people for using their defensive properly, but it also doesn't give you like a good on-ramp, I guess, to like train people to use it, it feels like.
Yeah, and a lot of time, I mean, you'll make a mistake, but the healer will just cover for it. And like they may not even say anything, right? Because healers are kind of used to like cleaning up after us DPS, so they may just go about their business, not even make a mention of it. But yeah, it's going back to the feedback aspect, right? Like not getting that feedback from the game, it can definitely be a little bit obscured from you how well you're doing in those situations.
I think a lot of people take for granted how important healing actually is, because it's kind of like the trickle down effect. They see that these keys are being timed without a healer, and they think healing isn't important, but they don't understand that that they're able to do that because, like Jack said, like these other players are just utilizing their defensives so well. And that's also something that those other players who aren't aware of healing's importance aren't doing, because they also think that it's the healer's job, or it doesn't matter that they don't press their defensives. It's a big misunderstanding between the top end players and people who are like, struggling in the middle.
So I love how you mentioned that, because, isn't it fair to say that it's a higher skill cap for using your defenses properly?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So in my opinion, I think my radical opinion is everybody has too many defensives, and we need to just collapse them down in a big way, because they're going to tune the content around it with the expectation that they're going to bait out people's defenses. This is something I think the Potty C was talking about, or maybe Growl was talking about it, of like the game pushing you to bait out your defensives, whether it's rating, whether it's M+ content. And then you're not quite able to rely on your healer in those moments because it has to be a combination of healing and defensive value. Having a 20% DR for things that are chunking you for a third of your health every single tick is a lot of damage reduction. It's a lot of mitigation.
Oh yeah.
And so healers can be put into a position where they can be forced to heal more and also be able to sustain people through constant damage if they're not tuning the damage with 20, 30, 40% damage reductions in mind for every single event.
And Aug in
Like
mind too.
Mage has like, yeah, and Aug in
Yeah.
mind. Like Mage has like what, 4 rounds of defensives, 5 defensives on hand they can actively spec into.
It's like mirror image. You have ice cold, which is ice block, and you have greater invisibility. That one's super short, takes skill to hit, but it's pretty strong, like 60%. And then yeah, you have your alter time, obviously, and your barrier. Don't forget your barrier.
Yeah, yeah. So you have like 5 defensives that you can like be cycling through,
Mhm.
and so it's a really swingy feeling running M plus, having a mage using those defensives, not using those defensives.
Yeah.
So like bring all of it down.
Yeah.
Like Priest has like 3 or 4. You have like Flash Heal gives you DR, Fade gives you DR, Desperate Prayer gives you a really big health increase. So you're cycling between all of these things. And it's sort of a bloat that if Blizzard's accounting for it, it's not like you get tankier. It's just you have more buttons to press to try to survive.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, like personally, I really enjoy running healerless keys because it's like you go so much faster, and it obviously it's like it takes extra skill to do it. But do I think it's healthy for the game? Obviously not, right? But it's still fun. I know back in Legion, like we were hitting up like Core to Stars, no healer with like a monk tank,
Yeah.
and that was sick. I mean, you could just farm so much AP so much faster because you're just going like blazing speed. But you know, whenever it comes to like their competitions and stuff, like enforcing a certain format, I feel like they maybe should go that route because it's a little weird whenever you see like the actual competitive aspects of WoW and they don't include the healers in that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In this recent MDI was like half of the dungeons were no healer dungeons.
Yeah.
Or I think it was like 3 out of 5. 3 out of 5 were no healer dungeons.
Yeah, that shouldn't be allowed.
So like, so obviously like pressing your defensives, throwing out your kicks whenever it's your time to kick, doing stops, like these are all things that are important to be like a good DPS player. But in your opinion, is there anything else that you see where it's like you really think like, oh, this person's really good, or like ways that DPS stand out to you as people you would want to run keys with again, like as a good player, Jack?
I think the biggest thing is what is actually going to be helpful communication. I think, especially when you get to the point where you're getting everybody into voice pretty regularly. There's sometimes that people will kind of have just like word vomit of like telling you like every little thing that they're doing. If you hit a mass AoE stun, it's pretty apparent that you're going to do it. So if you hit it and then communicate it, it's like, well, we already saw that. We already know. But being willing to just add more to the equation when there is kind of like a good use for it, not just over communicating things that aren't important. Being able to recognize what are the most important kicks and being able to like communicate what you're kicking, being able to step up and take responsibility for, okay, this mob is out in Narnia, let me leave melee. If I'm a melee DPS, go out and kick it, bring it back in. Those like very simple things that are where players are taking extra responsibility on hand in the moments where it's kind of murky of like, oh, anybody could go kick this mob. Anybody could go take care of this thing. I will go take care of it. And it just makes the run infinitely easier because everybody's had those mobs in Rise, the Maguses that are putting out the Shadow Bolt volleys or the Sand Bolt volleys. And they just start lagging behind because they're not being kicked and the tank keeps on dragging them.
Yeah, or like the first pull of Everbloom, I swear it's like so annoying whenever you go for the kick on the guy and he starts choking vining out there and no one is paying attention to it. And then it's just like you're the only one who's like paying attention to it. And of course the cast goes on you. So you're just sitting there like, okay, well, I guess I'm dead. Or the whole group is dead maybe. Yeah, I guess, yeah, just like relationships, right? Good communication. It's an important skill to have. And I mean, like I'll say personally, like in my groups, I like to communicate a lot just because, it's fun to have a conversation, but, yeah, keeping it down to the important stuff can sometimes be a bit challenging. But I think like groups who play a lot together get a good vibe for that, they get a good barometer for that.
Yep. And that's the thing is like sometimes when you pug, you have to be the person communicating everything.
Yeah, that can be exhausting.
It's exactly, I was gonna say, it's like really exhausting having the like desire to keep on communicating the really important things to the group and playing your spec and keeping upbeat if some mistakes are made and everything. Like I don't think I've really pushed up for IO in about a month and a half maybe, because that was kind of what just sort of burned me out. Was I would try to make sure I'm communicating this and communicating that, and then there'd just be like a simple mistake for a mechanic they didn't know about that they should have known about, and I'm like, well, this just ended up being a waste of time. So
Yeah.
Yep.
Really rough too whenever you have like people who are hell bent on like not being a good communicator, or even like going further than that and being like kind of a dick in dungeons, and just like leaving your key over some silly thing, or just like going out of their way to make other people not have a good time.
I've had
can be rough.
levers and PTR keys.
Dude, it's so crazy. Like, why are you here on PTR if you're not willing to like stick it out, man? We're learning together. Like, come on.
Ridiculous.
That's the thing is, like, so twice today, and so one of them I'll talk about is Azure Vault. We were having, we had some mistakes, and the tank went out of his way to be like, hey, like, it's no big deal. Like, we're all here to learn. Don't worry about it. So nobody was, flaming each other. And then, one of the DPS left. They like died to something, and they kept on dying. And then they literally just went offline. Like they didn't even leave group or anything like that. They literally just like logged out of the game and left. That's the second time today I've had it. It's like the 5th or 6th time throughout this weekend that I've had people literally just pull off PTR.
Man.
After they made a mistake. Like nobody said anything. They just did it.
Yeah. No, I've seen that. I've seen that plenty too. It always cracks me up because I always try to imagine like the scenario of what just happened. And I always just imagine like maybe they were at work playing and the boss just walked in, but no, I'm pretty sure they just like ripped the cord out angrily.
Yeah, you want to come up with some excuse to
give them a benefit of the doubt.
Assume they're not just horrible people who have no empathy for the other people in their group.
I think it's just everybody's there to learn. Like it's fine.
Yeah.
I don't care. I don't care if we don't have our PTR key.
So I'm
that
actually
could also be why they feel like it's okay to just dip and leave. For them, because it's PTR. These keys don't matter. But it's not a good thing to do. If anyone's watching and you're playing PTR or just doing any keys in general,
don't leave.
Rage quit. Yeah,
communicate. If you gotta leave, like explain it, but just don't leave the key. I mean, this goes for live too, man. Some people are just trying to get their box filled. Like when people leave 20s, that's like so frustrating. So I actually on my stream right now I have kind of like a B-roll of me running through Algathar Academy, and this just happened, so I'm gonna bring it up since it's our next topic here. So Tank pulled everything together, hit him with the ED, and then I think it's time to start damaging this devastation. Notoriously bad aggro issues as this class. Do we feel like tank threat is working as intended? Do we have an opinion on it at all? I guess what do you think about the current meta when it comes to like tanks establishing threat in dungeons?
I think tanks should do as much damage as damage dealers again. I think that's like a win-win-win in like many different areas. You're gonna get more people to play tanks. They're not gonna lose threat, and they're gonna have fun because they make big number. Because that's most of the reason why people play World of Warcraft is they want to see big number. And tanks really liked tanking when they made big numbers.
Yeah.
So if you give them big numbers, you have more tanks. They don't lose threats because that happens every expansion. When, DPS continue scaling, they just start ripping threat like crazy. Just check, solves all the problems.
And like it's to me, like obviously Dev is like one of those classes I'd say like up there with like Ret Pally or like Fury Warrior enhancement. Like there's a Demon Hunter to a certain extent. Like there's classes that like have a harder time, and there's also classes that don't have to worry about it at all, right? Because their damage comes from their pets, right? So like the Warlocks of the world, right? They're demons doing all the damage, or like the BM Hunters. So it really feels like in some cases it's like threat is a problem, but maybe it's not enough of a problem for enough classes where it like is on the radar yet. But there are like a lot of issues. Like a lot of people don't even know this, but like Vengeance Demon Hunter is just bugged. Like if they put a sigil down and they aren't in combat with that mob, it doesn't do tank threat. It just does normal threat. So like little things like that, and like it may not be a whole lot of things, but it's like, death by 1,000 cuts. You got like little aggro issues here. You've got the constant need of Blizzard to reinvent how threat works. They had fervent strikes because tanks are kiting, so they're like, oh, we got to add fervent strikes so that they can't kite anymore. And then also we're going to lower aggro, so they have to constantly be hitting to have their threat on there. And then, we're also going to adjust tanks completely. We're going to rework all the tanks, but we aren't going to go back to the drawing board and look at how we got here. We're just going to roll with it until it's a problem again. And like for a lot of classes, like that isn't really a problem. you know, because they're like, oh, I get threat, mirror image, greater invisibility, bop, bubble, etc., right? Fade. But like classes that don't have those buttons, it's like as you get more gear, it just becomes more and more frustrating to you because you're just like,
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna have less fun in this key because I know I'm gonna die to threat. Like every time I press my cooldowns, even if I wait till the mobs are at 80%, still gonna pull threat.
Like in your clip, I remember watching that. I was like, oh man.
It's rough, man. It's rough out here being dev. And it's for dev, just to go on the soapbox a little bit for this, because it's like, we don't have that many buttons, man. Just give us a button. Like, this is a new class. It's obviously like a bit experimental. We haven't fully cooked yet. Like, other classes have had years to get all their buttons figured out and what it means to be that class. Like, we have so few buttons. Why can't we just get one more button, man? We got so few buttons. I just want more buttons. That's all I want as a dev evoker. Do you do you feel the same way, Jedith, about Demon Hunter, or is it kind of
yeah, so Demon Hunter has had a bunch of issues as Havoc in particular. Like, there was a point in Shadowlands where Immolation Aura, because it's a shared ability between Vengeance and Havoc, there was a point where Havoc's Immolation Aura was doing the tank's threat amount of like the tank's version of the ability. So you would just run in, you'd pop Immolation Aura, you'd pull threat off the tank right away. And now I think they fixed that in this expansion, but threat is still a major issue for Havoc. Like, there was a point recently where I just had to start weaving Shadow Meld into my opener because I was bursting for too much, and I just every time my opener would pull threat, and I had to keep that in mind. So I don't know what I would do if I wasn't a night elf. Like,
it's rough out here.
Definitely, it's definitely an issue that they need to do something with. I don't know what the answer is, because like you said, if they just make tank threat a non-issue, then tanks are going to go back to kiting constantly. So I don't know what the answer is, truthfully.
Nah, if tanks do a lot of damage, they're not going to want to kite because they're going to want to do a lot of damage.
That's right.
True.
Fix the problem.
There you go.
I can't kite. I'm top DPS. Like, done.
Yeah.
Everything is right in the world. It's a paradise.
And if you hit a button as a tank that's like over 45 seconds cooldown and it deals damage, like, that should establish threat. You know what I mean? Like, that's your threat button. Like, why is it that we got to wait for Sunders on live? It's just, I think threat is an entire concept. Yeah, it doesn't feel fun to deal with. And it's something that not many classes have to deal with. So maybe people don't really notice how annoying it is. But I don't know. As a healer, do you ever like rip threat, or is that really not something that happens?
I have in the past. I mean, not from playing priest, but from like playing monk.
Yeah.
There was definitely times where I'm like running in and trying to just get a big spinning crane kick in. There's really been times in like BFA when corruption was really, really prevalent. I had the great idea to stack a lot of Twilight Devastation, run in, hit one button, it procs a 5-stack Twilight Dev, and then everything pulls to me.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's definitely those things. I mean, you mentioned it as well with Demon Hunter Sigil, where they'll use that sigil and I'm like, oh, they have threat, and like roll in on my monk, and then I'll just insta rip because there's the damage threat and there's also healer threat that adds into it. So there's a lot of times, even when I play priest, where if I didn't have fade or something like that and the tank might die, everybody comes to me, not the DPS first.
Yeah. At least whenever a healer threat is the reason why you die, like, everyone kind of agrees that it's a problem with the tank threat. Whereas for damage dealers, it can be annoying because you have a lot of time people will be like, oh, well, you didn't wait enough. Yeah, you didn't wait enough. And it's like, I mean, you're right, but also like, that's so annoying, right? Because like, how long you gotta wait? How long?
Yeah.
You gotta wait for the mobs to be 75%. Like, come on, man. Especially if they're the whole bit for your class is like, oh, you kill stuff fast, you do big burst, you're giant killer.
Yep.
Okay, well, what's up then? It's not working. Something about the design here isn't clicking.
They clearly just need to give tricks to the trade to Aug or to Dev.
Dude, if they do that, it's actually insanely overpowered. The tanks are gonna be getting like double threat. I mean, it's not that crazy though if you think about it. I mean, rogues have 100% tricks uptime in the War Within. They just get free infinite tricks threat. Never have to worry about it. Some classes don't have to worry about this stuff, you know? Just want to be one of the privileged few in that. But yeah, so what about healing? So, I mean, if tank threat, we feel like obviously tank threat feels a bit more put together, I guess, than a lot of other things in the game. But what about healers and the current meta for healing? You already touched on this a little bit, Jack, but how do you feel about it?
All of it is just a negative side effect of the Dragonflight talents. So the Dragonflight talents in general are very good. Love that. But when they added so many nodes for defensives and when they add so many nodes for just kind of like cooldowns in general, they made it so that they're designing the content around using these defensives and using, these cooldowns. And that's just kind of caused too much power creep, both for defensives and for healer power. So UDPS are simple. It's you just damage the mob, and that's your power or not power or whatever. But for healers, your power is based off how quickly you heal a health bar. And so when they're trying to balance raids where you're healing with 4 other people or 3 other people, and then versus dungeons where you're the only healer, they want you to be able to push up health pools quickly in a dungeon environment. But then that also means that you and 3 other healers can push up health pools ridiculously fast in a raid. So they just make everything burstier. And so it's just a combination of like insanely bursty damage. Healers were too strong in pushing up a health bar too quickly. And so Blizzard, in conjunction with all of the off healing and all the defensives that Dragonflight talents give you, they turn the knob super high up as a result. And then you just get into this environment where the healer is responsible for most of the affixes and trying to keep people alive and coordinating defensives and, burst damage, burst healing, and trying to survive. So it's very messy. Hopefully they can do like a soft reset for next expansion, but it's been very messy. In BFA, we got soapbox time. We got essences, corruption, all of that fun stuff.
Yeah.
But what they kept doing was with the Heart of Azeroth, they would explode your stamina. And so they did this in a couple ways. The Azerite gear, they increased the base stamina on Azerite gear in Battle for Dazar'alor because they
Right.
saw it coming. It was a massive health increase going into BOD. Very fun raid tier to heal. And then each extra node on your Heart of Azeroth, as you're unlocking your essences, was also exploding up the stamina that you were getting onto your gear. So that way, the power that you were getting as a healer to top off a health pool faster was also running in line with the extra stamina that you were gaining
Right.
as you got more gear, as you got more borrowed power, all of that. And they were well prepared for it, to their credit, in BFA, but they didn't have the starting number low enough at the start of the expansion.
Yeah.
And so you started up at like this level when you should have started off at like this level and then gradually risen.
Yeah, I remember at the start of Dragonflight, they did some weird stuff with the health pools adjustments to try and hit the target. But it definitely does seem like a cat and mouse game, right? Like there's always going to be like an intended target, and then there's going to be where it actually is, and trying to get to that point. I think as long as tuning is happening regularly, it's good. But where would you rate the current, like if you just look at live keys right now, this moment, you log on live, you do them 1 out of 10. How's the healing experience now compared to whatever the best it's been?
God, what is the best it's been? That is a good question. Best it's been just in general for healing was probably the end of BFA M+, I would say. That was probably the best. Shadowlands, healers were cosmetic, like straight up. You were just adding damage, and it didn't really feel like you were adding much to the equation. It was play the meta spec that does more damage, and then, just go crazy. So Legion was fun, but you're swapping around gear like crazy for like one shots, and everybody was kind of working collaboratively, which was kind of fun. But there was also just like pulling mobs and kiting them forever. So I would say like end of BFA was probably the most fun. I think I like how a lot of healers play, but I don't like the environment of healing the way that we have it at the moment. So I'd give it, I don't know, like a 5 or a 6 out of 10 for what we have at the moment. There's been better forms, and they can't really push the reset button until a new expansion. And so
Right.
that's been very frustrating.
So just to follow up on that, would you say it's like been that way the entire expansion, or did it like start higher and drop lower, or reverse of that?
It's after like season 1, we kind of hit the point of no return. Aug actually kind of helped because you're getting so much extra stamina from the spec in dungeons in particular that it actually made things feel a little bit better for a while. But then you were required to bring that alongside. Otherwise, your experience would be lessened. But since they've kind of brought that down and healers get stronger over the course of expansions, it's just been kind of like worse. I mean, even in raids, the damage is so insanely bursty that you're getting hit by a regular mechanic, which you used a defensive for, or a raid-wide defensive was for, and you're at like 10% health or 20% health. You're just like barely clinging to life. And like that stuff's just enormously frustrating, especially when you're on farm content too. It's like, hey, everybody, make sure you're still using everything perfectly because we can't heal through the one shot. It's goofy.
Gotcha. Cool. Good. I appreciate the answer. Yeah, I need to. Well, it's like hard to guess, right? Because like you hear the healing complaints online. Everyone's gonna yap
yeah.
about their complaints. I do this all the time myself, so it's always hard to get a gauge for like where people feel things are. They could always be better, but yeah, that's a good answer.
And it just always starts from the beginning of the expansion, and so like after that point, it's kind of like the point of no return. They've tried to do a couple things to like fix it mid expansion, but you can't really. All they're doing is putting band-aids on it, and to be fair, that's all they can do in the near term.
So that's what they tried to do with the health increase, right?
Yeah, they did it
that,
twice.
Like, twice, yeah.
Mm-hmm. They did that twice, and then they also increased. It was kind of like a stealth thing, but the amount of health that you gain on your gear in Emirgersil Season 3 stuff is drastically higher than it was in Season 1 and Season 2. So that you're outscaling your primary stat, but it's all like band-aids. It's trying to mitigate the symptoms a little bit here and there, but it's not actually resolving the issue itself.
I think I remember reading somewhere or hearing in an interview that they don't plan on doing a stat squish until the midnight expansion because that's when they're sort of anticipating Legion levels of numbers. Do you think that's going to be problematic if they don't do a stat squish? Is that going to affect healing in a negative way even further?
No. So I'm not worried about like the actual numbers themselves. It's the amount of healing that you do relative to a health bar. And so the burstier that is, the quicker you could push up a health pool, the burstier they make all the other damage. What they really have to do, like they can get the rest of the numbers correct and where they need to be, and they will, knock on wood. But what they really need to do, which they haven't announced yet, is they need to increase healing for 5-mans. So like Disc has a modifier where Atonement does 50% more in dungeons. Since you're the only healer there, you need to push up health pools faster than if you had 3 other people helping you. And so they need to make it so that every healer has that kind of modifier. They have it for a lot of individual abilities like Trank, Divine Hymn has it, a bunch of them, where this individual ability does more in 5-mans. Atonement does more in 5-mans, but they need to do it all around so that healers can push up health pools easily in a 5-man, but then it's really hard to do it in a raid environment unless you have the help of 3 other healers.
Makes sense.
Well, hopefully they can sort it out. I don't know, man.
Dude, the numbers are crazy right now. Like, have y'all seen the Sims? I've been running Sims for Season 4, and like our damage is going crazy. We're doing like 400k or more. Now we're talking in like the best gear. And, you know, right now in live, it's like you're doing what, like 230k maybe? Or maybe like less than that. But like that's such an insane jump. And to not have a squish until like 3 expansions from now is that's going to be something to see. I'll tell you that. Hopefully they nail it. I mean, I feel like they've been pretty good about the I'm level, but it's just like, it's kind of like a cosmetic thing too, you know? Like it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. You do bigger numbers, people see the number bigger, but it doesn't change the gameplay. Yeah, it's all relative, exactly. Yeah. But I will say it does feel like the numbers are getting kind of crazy though already, even just looking at Season 4.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you have your floating combat text on, it's just more numbers stacking on top of numbers. It's hard to keep track of.
Do you like hitting for bigger numbers, Jedith? Like whenever you see a million, a little M next to your number, does that make you feel good or?
I mean, yeah, I think everyone does, but it's just how we've been trained.
Dude, Jack here is like these DPS, man.
Yeah.
my healer numbers are all turned off and stuff, so I'm like, you know.
Yeah. Listen, there's like a monkey brain in there somewhere, right? And I see big number and I start just pogging out, dude. I see it and it's sick.
Yeah.
Well,
what can I say?
I'm saying. If tanks did a lot of damage, we'd have more tanks. It's
that's
a simple
right.
answer, right? It would just work, you know?
Yeah. Okay, I'm glad we agree then. That's great.
Yeah. All right, let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about the upcoming Awakened, but it's actually like the Fated concept coming up in Season 4. I kind of already gave my opinion on it. I think it's a little dull, truthfully. Not really looking forward to progging those raids again. Not at all, honestly. Like, really not looking forward to doing Razageth. Do we think that that faded or awakened concept is a good thing? Do we want to continue seeing it? Or should that have only been a temporary thing in Shadowlands when there was sort of that content drought and they were trying to catch up because of COVID and all the other stuff that happened?
I think if the raid was different, it would be a lot better. I mean, if they were bringing back an old raid like Tomb of Sargeras or Nighthold or Throne of Thunder or something like that, I think that would be fine. But when you talked about reprogging the raids, I think that kind of touches on the biggest issue is that there's a disconnect when you're going back to content that's very recent. It was kind of like when you're playing in Shadowlands, it was the same dungeons the entire expansion and kind of dragged on. But if somebody comes back in season 2 and they didn't play season 1, then you're like, oh gosh, like this guy doesn't know the mechanics. This content's been out for 6 months. You don't know the mechanics. We do Faded again, and then you have somebody who joined your roster and they didn't play in Aberrus, and it's like, oh gosh, I gotta like relearn the mechanics. I gotta wipe on this fight. I know what my job is. I've done this, 100 pulls on this, and now we have to have somebody else learn. And then you do that for 3 different raids that are cycling each week so you can get your achievement. It's pretty frustrating for a lot of veteran players. But if instead it was just, hey guys, here's this raid that's 6 years old, update it for the new content, everybody's going to have to relearn it to some extent. I think that kind of like realigns everybody's like perspective, and everybody kind of starts off at a similar point together, and it just changes things up compared to what we have, right now. I don't think most people want to go cycle through the 3 raids either.
No, I don't know anybody that does. No one's excited for it.
Yeah.
Oh no.
People are excited to get the items, but nobody actually wants to kill those bosses again.
I'm raising my hand. Yeah,
Oh.
I actually do like it. So I mean, like the other raids were so much better for Dev Evoker, man. Like Midrisil were down bad. Like I really enjoyed it during Vault. So it's like it's purely just because I enjoyed playing Dev in those seasons because I was overpowered, and now I'm not, and I'm going back to being overpowered, and that's fun. But I totally get it though. Like my guild, like I'm raiding on NA and the U, and pretty much everyone's opinion is like, yeah, we don't want to do Razageth again. But I mean,
I was going to point out you raid on multiple raid teams, so
Yeah.
I think you kind of have a different relationship with
It's
raiding
true.
than some other people.
I'm guilty.
You
Yes,
clearly just you love it a little bit too much.
perhaps. I will admit to that. Yeah, I do like raiding a lot. I actually raid in 3 different groups, not 2. I have a alt raid on EU that I do on my mage. We're progging Farah currently. What can I say, dude? I just like the game. What else?
You're doing prog again on Farak?
Yeah, doing it on my fire mage. Yeah, we killed Tindril like 2 weeks ago.
I've done that in the past, but then after I started raiding in like Future and like BFA, like, and was doing raid raiding and stuff, that's when I stopped. That's when I was done.
Yeah, I actually enjoyed it a lot because the group I'm playing with, it's not like we raid much. It's 1 day a week and it's 2 hours. So like that might change your perspective a little bit because it's not that much of an investment. And it's all people who have killed the boss before, but just on other classes. Everyone's playing it alt, right? So it's not like quite, but it's not even like one guild though. It's like an amalgam of different Hall of Fame guilds, all kind of coming together with one guild kind of leading the show a little bit. But I don't know, it's fun. We don't really get to prog too much because I mean, 2 hours, it's not much time to get there, right? We usually just get in like 5 or 6 pulls, but we almost killed it. We had it down to like 3% or something on like one of the nights. So yeah, looking forward to hopefully getting that kill sometime soon.
Okay, that sounds a lot more fun than the initial.
Yeah, I didn't sell it right. Yeah, I had to give you the full picture. Yeah.
I was imagining like 3 nights with each guild, 4 hours.
No. That's insane. That's too far, man. I like raiding, but not that much. Speaking of which, so like Mythic Plus, obviously, like if you're looking for content, we all stream, right? We know how this goes. You're going online, you're in WoW, you're like, let's do some content, let's stream something for the people, right? It really sucks that it feels like there's nothing for raiding that does that, right? Like you can do Mythic Plus infinitely. You can do it until your eyes bleed. But you cannot do raiding like that unless you find a bunch of different groups and coordinate and do all this extra effort. And even then, it doesn't really kind of have this. It's not the same feel, right? And I just know, like Jack, I know you enjoy raiding. Obviously, you've been raiding for a while now. Like, how do you feel about the fact that Mythic is like so restrictive, where it's like you're locked in once you have it done, you can't even like pug it?
Yeah, it feels like everything around rating has become more and more like closed off. Even trying to like make friends with people in other guilds. Like one of the things I liked about boosting communities, we could probably have that as an entire different subject. But one of the things I liked about it was when you were doing the sales raids, it was kind of bringing around
Yeah.
everybody from the same, quality of guilds that you were in. And you may never have had any relationships with these people from other like top 20 US guilds or something, and suddenly you're in a raid group, 1 or 2 nights a week, and you're kind of building your community and building out your network of excellent players. And so with that kind of gone, and with not much incentive for having alt runs or gearing up your alts throughout Mythic, because you could just get the heroic version, it's almost
Yeah.
as good for the item. There's not too much of a push to be running around gearing alts. Like my guild's not really gearing any alts, or doesn't really have much of a desire for it. We kind of did it where we did it for Aberrus to get ourselves ready for a Mirjasil, but it wasn't like people were really fired up about doing it or getting excited about doing it. And so, yeah, I think as they've worked to make Mythic Plus more equal, not perfectly equal, but more equal with raid gear, it's also, they haven't done anything to make it easier to get into raiding from the beginning. And so it's still this massive, wall you have to climb with the lockout and the raid size. It just turns people off from doing it at all.
Yeah.
And they just kind of default to doing M plus. And then, yeah, people are going to want to watch content that they relate to. And that's not really Mythic raiding right now.
I feel like the incentives to Mythic Raid are just so small. Like you said, you can get pretty much everything from the Mythic Raid. You can get just from Heroic. You get a slightly less powerful version, but I mean, we're talking slight, right? It's like 483 versus 489. 6 item levels is the whole difference.
And that matters for 0.1% players,
right?
But not for the average Joe.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's like it's an interesting question, right? Like, how do you get more players into raiding? Because I feel like the biggest way would probably make it less restrictive, remove some barriers of entry for it. But it seems like they're dead set on keeping, they being Blizzard, keeping the whole lockout system in place. Obviously, Heroic is nice. It's nice and open, but it's not the same. Like, Heroic Raid is fun. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy doing a Heroic, as long as it isn't a full group, because the game can't really handle that. But, yeah. But, yeah, I feel like a lot of people are missing out on this, like, premium content, because the raids in WoW, the Mythic raids early on, that shit is so premium. There's really nothing out there, aside from, I guess, like, Final Fantasy, Lost Ark to a certain extent, where, like, the bosses feel that good to do. And yeah, I would love to have more people be interested in it. I mean, it's fun to me. I enjoy it a lot. It's just, I just feel like they've really made it hard to get into.
Well, it kind of tails back to our conversation at the beginning with Plunderstorm, right? Is the juice worth the squeeze? And so back in the day when Mythic rating was the pinnacle of all rewards at the top, it made sense that the barrier of entry would also be pretty hard. But now they've reduced some of those rewards, and that's fine. But then also reduce this difficulty to get into it to begin with, Because, yeah, I mean, what they did with M Plus coming up for Season 4, where they're shrinking the dungeons, and so that a 10 is now equivalent to a 20. So Mythic 0 is harder, but there's no time limit for it. This provides a good on-ramp for players to start getting into M+, which is fantastic. Like, yeah, they're going to get brutalized in some Mythic Zeros. Like a very casual player is going to get brutalized in that, but there's no timer for it, and you still get the full reward at the end, which is great. And then once they learn, they can get into regular M+ that they may not have done otherwise.
Yeah.
Right now, I feel like Heroic has gotten easier than it historically is, which is fine, but then there's not really an on-ramp to get people into Mythic at that point. They just kind of stop. And that, I think, is a failure of like their overall system to not continuously provide a slight increase in difficulty to get people into other game modes.
Yeah, I mean, if you're doing like Mythic progression too, it's like you get hit by a wall once you reach Tindral, at least pre-nerf Tindral, because it was like, you have like a slight modicum of difficulty leading up to Smolderon. Smolderon is like the first check where you actually have to be like kind of coordinated to get it down, and it's a little bit down to the wire. And then you get to Tindral, and it's like, okay, what is going on here? You're probably going to wipe within the first 10 seconds like 20 times. And don't get me wrong, I love that. I love the boss. I still like it now, but I had a lot of fun with it in progression. But I mean, like that, the difficulty curve just goes completely out the window this tier, right? And every tier is different. Every tier has its own tuning with the bosses. But I would love to see a version of Mythic Plus where it is easier to get into, make the first couple bosses maybe even easier, and then give us a bit more of a gradient leading up to the top. And I would like to see heroic be harder. I feel like the gap there is just way too wide. Like I know it has to do with gearing too, but and then LFR, I just don't even know what that's for.
So
Aside
do you
from
think
just
they
trying to
could-
get my legendary.
What if they deleted LFR, made LFR what normal is now, or make normal what LFR is now, get rid of normal, and then you jump into heroic and then into mythic?
Does anyone
'Cause
actually like
there's one
LFR?
there that's unnecessary.
Does anyone actually like, is there like a fan out there like LFR mega fan who's like, this is my favorite thing, I'm so glad LFR exists? I don't.
I think I think it serves a purpose for like casual players.
For
'cause it
sure,
also
for
is
sure.
a story conduit. I think
Yes.
getting rid of like normal and then having just, you know, LFR and then get
Like
rid
a
of the
story
old
mode.
normal. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then current heroic becomes the new normal. Mythic becomes, you know, the new heroic, something like that. To kind of truncate it in the same way, I think would help. But yeah, I mean, they're going to keep LFR around.
Yeah, I'm not saying to get rid of it. I'm just saying, like, whenever I run it, I feel like everyone's just mad the whole time. Like, I don't think I've ever been in an LFR where it seemed like people were enjoying themselves. And I certainly don't enjoy it, aside from the fact that you can get up in AFK and do something else while it's happening and come back and it's fine, right? But, yeah, I mean, it serves an important purpose, obviously. It's the story mode for folks who don't have the means to do the raid, and they get to still experience all this good content, because otherwise it would just be going to waste, right? Those people wouldn't even see it. But on the same note, I kind of feel like it diminishes the will to go and do it on normal or heroic, because it's like, oh, I already killed those bosses, right? Like, I've got real life friends who used to play WoW, and they'll be like, oh yeah, I already did the raid. I'm like, oh cool, what'd you do? And they're like, oh, I just did an LFR. And it's like, well, I feel like maybe you experienced the story, but I feel like you didn't. I don't know. I don't want to gatekeep it, but I also feel like you're missing out. There's an opportunity here for like having more fun, and a lot of people just are passing on it. I feel like that's the LFR effect.
It's giving them a reason to not look into raiding, because they can just go and do it in a day and it's done. They don't really have to like go through the effort of finding a raid team. And I don't want to say effort in a bad way, because it's actually really rewarding to do. But they're not being encouraged to do it because they can just take the short path, right? And they get to see the items, they get to see the story, they get to see the bosses, but it's not the same. There's something about being on a raid team, struggling, and then overcoming it as a group. It's hard to explain to people until they actually do it.
Well, it's delayed gratification, but it's very tough to be able to like build up that mindset of delayed gratification and the benefits of it to people who haven't really had that experience before. The thing is, I would see that as where current heroic could sort of fill that in. And if the barrier of entry was not so high for Mythic, I think the first, 3 bosses of Mythic, give or take, are actually really well tuned for those players to get into it if they can make the raid group, if they can get a team together, if they can do XYZ, right? Because you could very easily have what Final Fantasy does is after the first like 2-3 weeks or so, people are actually pugging Savage difficulty. And it's like, hey, everybody, we're using this strat. This is how the boss works. And a lot of the early boss fights, I mean, you're looking at like Volcaros. It's like, okay, guys, just go play the fight on Mythic difficulty. And after a while, people learn what's going on. But it's really like the combination of like the lockout and the raid size that sort of serves to heavily reduce any sort of like potential participation. Like maybe the lockout on its own would be enough, because then that would try to get people in on like, week 1, week 2. But I think the raid size plays a huge role.
Raid size for sure, lockout for sure. Both of these are definitely issues. I'll tell you from my perspective, like whenever I have an alt and I want to get that alt gear, I almost don't want to try to find a group for it, because I want to just slip into my guild's raid and get a couple bosses. That way I know I can get those bosses done. But if I'm pugging, like what's going to happen is let's say it goes perfectly, right? And we kill the boss. You're going to have someone leave. And now you're stuck with a lockout where you can't replace that person. Unless you have a good replacement for it. But who wants to go in with no certainty about killing the first boss and getting saved to this lockout now where you get nothing for the week, right? It's like, and it's because of the lockout just being so overly restrictive. I agree that it should be that way initially, because the world first race, I mean, we have to consider how the game works in terms of how you could cheese it, right? It would just be ridiculous with the lockout being open from the start. But I think like once you have Hall of Fame filled up, like what's the harm? and opening the lockout and letting people, pug. Maybe I could even pug my Ferric, right? Like I would have to find some really insane people, but like at least I'd have a goal that I could go for. And I feel like because the barrier of entry is so high, it really has this negative downstream effect on like the community itself, because we're all siloed into like our groups. Whereas like you're talking about in Final Fantasy, like I feel like it's much more of a community thing. Like you go to the Final Fantasy subreddit, you see like diagrams and stuff where people are talking about like, here's how you do this boss and the positioning for this fight, right? Like you don't really see that too much for WoW because all of this is happening in Discord. The community aspect is, I guess, taking a small hit because there's not really the on-ramp for people to get into this sort of content.
Yeah, maybe after the World First race, honestly, if they opened up the Mythic raid lockout, because Hall of Fame, as people in my chat pointed out, did take a long time to fill, and
this tier,
make
yes,
sure you're kind of striking when the iron is hot,
yeah,
as well, where people still kind of care about it. So I would love it if there were a lot of things sort of like tied to the World First being over, as ways to like either nerf the content or ways to make it more accessible to people. And because it's going to have a lot of excitement about the World First race anyway.
Yeah.
And rather than it being, hey, the World First race is complete, and then now I leave, it's, oh, we can do these extra things in game. There's this excitement about, being able to bring my alts into the first boss or two on Mythic or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what the solution is, but I feel like there's an opportunity there that we're kind of missing out on. And I know from like my community that a lot of people are interested in this kind of thing. A lot of people want to try out raiding, and maybe they're just not taking that leap because they know how much work it is to get into it. So having it be more accessible would be a good thing. But again, I don't know if removing LFR is the solution. I don't think it is. I think it's maybe reassessing the difficulty. I think a story mode is important, but yeah, heroic and mythic difficulty and lockouts, definitely something I would like to see in the War Within. If you could do anything, Jack, if you could just like be a dev for a day and like flip switches, what's your first order of business?
Probably fixing healing first.
Okay.
Like I talked about before, it would definitely be having an extra modifier for increased healing in 5-man environment, probably 10-man mythic as well. Yeah, I think those are probably the top two.
What'd you do, Jedith?
So I'm a Mythic Plus monkey and a dopamine addict. I think the first thing that I would do is totally restructure the reward system in Mythic Plus. I think there's a lot of potential there that they could sort of mirror the way that the PvP system works, where there's granular sort of rewards based on rating. You could do like a Mythic Plus exclusive transmog set like PvP has, and you can get like rewards based on your rating as you go up. You could do a mount that you get, like the PvP one, like the one where you have to fill the bar up to 100. And then even beyond that, like you could continue filling that bar and you get these saddles in PvP to buy, previous mounts. If you do that in Mythic Plus, you could buy like the previous season's Mythic Plus transmog set. There's so many things you can do. And I think right now they're just sort of missing out on a lot of things. And truthfully, if they did that, I feel like they'd have a lot more people participating in Mythic Plus because there's more incentive to do it other than just, getting your portals that, in my opinion, don't really have any prestige attached to them.
Yeah,
they're
definitely
just
not.
they're a spell in your spell book. Nobody can see them like they can see a title or a transmog set or a cool weapon or something like that. They don't have the same sort of effect personally. And then the other thing that we have right now is just the number, this arbitrary number that is supposed to sort of reflect your mastery over the system of Mythic Plus. But even that it only goes so far. I think there's a lot more they could do with Mythic Plus, and that would be the first thing that I would change.
I'll tell you from well, I would also be a bit selfish about it, kind of like you, Jack, with the fix my thing first. It's a pressing problem. Listen,
you got to.
Exactly. Yeah, dev's right. I mean, that's like first thing, right? But bring back challenge modes. I mean, dude, okay, so doing high keys is fun. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy like having that system. I like the Mythic Plus system to a certain extent and how it's structured and how you get the rewards and stuff. But there's really not like an incentive for it aside from just like getting the title. That's it. You know what I mean? Like doing a key above 20, it doesn't really feel like there's any reason to do that unless you're going for title. And I feel like it's not something that interests me sometimes. But what's really fun is doing keys fast. I've always enjoyed that. Being super hyper efficient about farming stuff as quickly as possible. I have a lot more fun optimizing at 20 to be like, you know, we're talking like sub 10 falls. Like we're just trying to go for like the fastest fall possible. I've always enjoyed that a lot more than pushing the content to the point where everything's a one shot and we're having to like bring the right classes or else we're, you know, the comp is doomed because we have to figure out all the little ins and outs and have a defensive here and everyone's got to be able to survive this and we have to go to a website and calculate if we're going to die to this damage or not. Like I still like Mythic Plus. I wouldn't want that to go away, but I would love to have the challenge modes back with like a time, whoever's like the fastest is the winner, right? Like that to me was super fun.
Those were really fun. It was also cool because it would be in poverty gear, basically.
Yeah. Yeah,
You know,
I standardize item level. That's right.
Yeah, you standardized the item level and it was low. Like it was the start of expansion, low levels of haste, start of expansion, you know, no sockets, whatever. It's like you'd be able to get better itemized pieces over the course of the expansion, better trinkets that worked well at that low scaling level. So yeah, those are really interesting. I get that there's not like a tangible reward, but I do still, I mean, number go up like you guys were talking about as a DPS. I still feel that enjoyment of like, yes, I gained 3 IO, right?
Yeah.
That is still pretty gratifying, but I do agree that the lack of like a mid-core progression definitely is odd. So
it's
yeah,
so
let's just
all
get
or
all
nothing.
the PvP rewards.
Yeah,
we'll
yeah.
be able to earn the exact same PvP mount for doing M+. That'll make the community.
I'm sure they'll love that.
Everybody will be loving that. Let's do it.
PvP
doesn't have to do any extra work. Just give us those rewards too.
PvP, a system that has historically done so well. Everybody loves the state of PvP. It's the current system is really bringing in people and they're playing. Okay, sorry, yeah. I shouldn't make jokes about that, but it is, dude. I feel like PvP this expansion has been like such a nightmare, man. Like I'm reading like what they're dealing with in the tuning, like class tuning when it comes to PvP, and like we got one of them in here, dude. The demon hunters, gotta watch out for those guys. They're crazy. I guess the Ret's like the enemy of the week currently on the PvP train, but like I feel bad. I look at the stats for PvP and I see like what the class balance looks like, and it's crazy. I feel like they're dealing with way more than we are when it comes to like class imbalance, but who knows? Cool. So moving on. I mean, so season 4 around the corner, right? It's time to make some predictions. So, Jedith, why don't you kick us off? What is your prediction for the best tank in season 4?
I mean, I think it's pretty obvious to everyone that Vengeance is in the slot to take that. Like they're set up to be. I would hope that there is some tuning or some balancing that happens that will adjust that, or at least make the other tanks have a standing chance. But as of right now, it's looking like Vengeance is gonna just take everything. I don't know what the solution is there to fix that problem. Like, do you nerf Vengeance? Because if you do that, then I think Vengeance is just dead in the water.
Right.
Or do you bring all other tanks up to Vengeance level? I feel like that's a lot of work because they have to figure out the control, CC, utility for all those other classes. I'm not sure what the solution is, but yeah, I think tanks are definitely just kind of taken up by Vengeance right now. I don't know. What do you guys think?
It's VDH. Like, it's not even a question. Yeah. It's not even a question. They're too strong, man. They got too much going on. The only way that, in my mind, the only way it's not VDH is if they make all the sigils like one charge and it's like shared or something like that. Because like it's just they do too much. Like it's just too, and they're unkillable too. Yeah. Obviously they have a little shaky threat, but like I mean that's not really a problem for most of the meta classes, anyways, right? Priest got Fade, Mage got Mirror Image. Yeah, and also like an insane buff too, right? Like they just make the enemy take more magic damage. Guess what sort of damage you're gonna have in your comp? Probably it's probably gonna be the spells, you know, spellcasters. It's all magic. Even for melee, it's all magic. Everyone's doing magic damage. It's a great buff. So yeah, I think that's a no-brainer.
What would you say for healer then, Jack? Where are you standing with what's going to be the meta healer in season 4?
Probably more of the same. I mean, Monk and our Druid, I think, are in really, really strong positions. I think there's still a really big pool of priests in the 0.1% title range. But since Shadow Priest came up from the depths that they were in at the beginning of season 3, and they're actually quite good now, that erodes holy and disc representation in the 0.1%. So that way you can bring your Mark of the Wild in the healer slot, since neither of the DPS druids are insane. They're pretty
Right.
good, but they're not insane. And so then you easily sort of build that out for your group. Monk's output is just ridiculously high. They have good crowd control, all that fun stuff. The physical damage buff isn't that great, but they still just muscle heal you through just about anything, and they never die either. But I would say probably for like an Exodia comp, like MDI type stuff, maybe even TGP, it would probably be Resto Druid followed by Monk. Healer priests are both, like Holy and Disc, are both really good right now. It's just how you build a comp for like Exodia, right?
Yeah.
When Shadow Priest is in a good position, you can have other buffs elsewhere, and so that's where the healer will fill in with that buff.
We know there's going to be a priest. The question is what spec is the priest? And the better Shadow is, the less I guess the healer versions. I mean, it's the same problem with Aug, right? Like,
Exactly.
there's like
Aug and Prez.
Yeah, you're a little bro, right? Like you're the little bro. You gotta wait for the big bro. It was the same thing in season 1 with Preservation Evoker before Augmentation even really existed yet. Yeah, it's kind of weird, right? Because you have like such a restrictive comp. Obviously, it's a bigger problem in Raid than it is in Mythic Plus, but like to a certain extent, it's still there. Like you have to really think about the Raid buffs first and foremost, and then you gotta just like fit everything in where it can fit. So yeah, I mean, I guess the next one is like, do we think we're running an Aug in the season? And I mean, like, I think it's pretty obvious that unless something changes big, or like unless there's like an outlier in terms of like how overpowered one of these specs is, like you're probably gonna want the added padding of Aug, because you're just giving everyone like a little foam safety helmet, right? As long as the Aug is playing well. So,
well, at what point does it start to matter that you're missing that damage? That extra damage from.
Well, that's if it's a tier where the damage is super important. I mean, you may not run it at all. But I mean, like, I'm not talking about, by the way, like 20s and stuff. I'm not saying to like always bring Aug for that. Right. But I'm just saying, like, I think the highest keys at the end of the season, you'll probably have a bit of a mixture. Like Jack was saying, probably more of the same, right? Like a lot of the classes that are good right now are going to still be good. So a lot probably won't change there. But I do think that if you have a good Aug, it does make your margin for error smaller, essentially. So it can be a beneficial thing to bring to the comp. And then for like other DPS, I mean, it's like mage buff, priest buff, druid buff, DH buff, and then you get one other guy. Who that guy is, who knows? Who does the most damage, right? We'll have to wait and see. Maybe it's a warlock.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of warlocks and a lot
warlock's
of DKs.
really good. Yeah. Dev has the damage, but it doesn't have anything else really, so that's the problem with it. It's definitely overtuned in terms of its damage, but it also has like glaring issues. So Warlock has like the same damage, and it doesn't have the threat issue like at all. There's no issue there, and you bring health stones and other cool stuff. So yeah, it's always harder to, I think, to like figure out exactly what the DPS meta is going to be like. But I have seen arcane mages do really well. I've noticed fire damage isn't quite there. Have you seen a good fire mage yet, Jack? Like who's like really shredding the meters in your pugs?
Not that I've seen. I've usually been seeing more people running the like locks and DKs, like putting up really big numbers.
Yeah. I've yet to see a mage who like does like lock or like dev for DK damage. I've seen arcane do it, but I have not seen fire get that close. No. So we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I think the meta obviously evolves over the season too as new technology is figured out, right? So as all those new toolkit items are added to the tool belt, Aug does gain a little value there too. Thinking like Brackenhide with like Wormstone tech, for instance. Go ahead.
They haven't done much tuning to classes yet, have they? Like we've gotten our tier sets, but
no, we have to wait for that.
Balancing has happened, so that could really sway things one direction or the other.
If they even do it, I mean, it's a season 4, right? It's like I think the bit is that it's like not a real season. A lot of people don't really consider it to be like a real season. So they may just like forego it. I don't know. How do you feel? Like, would you rather them tune it and then have a bang in season 4 and like maybe there's an opportunity cost and War Within is like slightly worse off? Or would you rather them just like full focus on the War Within and say like, we don't care what season 4 is like? Jack.
I think they did some tuning in the last Fated season that we had. And it was my understanding that there were not that many people working on it.
Yeah.
So I would have to assume, and there's a nice like happy medium where like Holy Priest just got some changes in 10.2.6, which kind of helped set the stage for next expansion. There were some like capstone talents that were kind of difficult to route to that you just always took anyway, and they moved them up and they kind of simplified some things here and there. So I would imagine there's very much room for them to do those kind of changes. I think Paladin really needs some pruning, in particular. Holy Pally has a bunch of abilities that feel like they do 0 healing right now. They, I think, are like prime target to be getting a couple class changes going into season 4. But yeah, we'll see if they take that opportunity.
Yeah. I think obviously we'll have to wait and see, but no matter what, like I don't think it really would take too much for them to tune it up. Like it's not really, if you have someone in there who like is aware of the current place that tuning is like, we have so many other tools to get an idea on that, right? Like Simcraft can obviously look at the testing stuff too. Would be interesting to see all that data all put together, but I definitely feel like a lot of classes are a bit of outliers right now in terms of their damage either being too high or way too low. I guess healing and tanks, there's, it's not an exception there, especially with VDH. Way too strong, but also fun, but too strong. So you've been pugging the 3K, Jack. Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, yeah. So I started a 0 to Hero series where I first started with the default starter talent build, which is lacking some very important abilities, like the little treants that Druid started using, I think, in season 2, late season 2. Started doing that, and with no add-ons, so I'd be forced to use like the default UI, the default click casting, and everything. So I put that together as a series, pugging incognito, not running any of my keys, just always running in pugs that I've applied to. And yeah, in that series, I've been putting it up on YouTube about every week. I've been having people leaving dungeons after the very first death, after the very first pull. I've had 15, 20 Death of Taldazar runs where they're still very chestable and people leave anyway. I've had people flaming each other over kicks and saying it's okay that I didn't get that many kicks. I'm doing 2k more damage than the other person who actually is kicking. It's been a very wild experience. I've done a couple different name changes since then, but I got the 2500. I got the Keystone Hero with the default starter talents, which was just a nightmare because you're using lots of rejuve with that setup, and you really don't want to be using much of any rejuve whatsoever when you're actually in an M plus build.
Yeah.
So it's been a lot of fun, but it's also been pretty ridiculous in the process.
Weren't you playing like Aug with a controller too before, whenever that came out?
Yeah. Season 2, I grabbed an Xbox controller, and there's an add-on called Console Port.
Yeah.
And so I was setting up all the commands and everything like that to play Aug. It was a little difficult aiming prescience if you were actually trying to min-max prescience usage, which I was trying to sweat up a little bit. It was a little difficult to target people, but otherwise the spec played really well. I think there's actually quite a few specs in the game you could play. You could play on the sticks, as they call it.
Yeah, I think Ret Pally is another good one for that, if you're looking for another one.
Yeah.
Dude, that sounds like the most cursed challenge, though. Like the healing pug thing that you're talking about, the pug in 3K. Sounds so cursed. Sounds like premium content, though.
It is premium content, because it's also fun when you're not expecting to like have a good run. You're not expecting to go through a perfect situation. And I think kind of like realigning your expectations when you're doing dungeons is also kind of fun.
Yeah.
When I'm going from trying to be super sweaty and pushing for the title like I do every single season, and I'm like, I must gain IO or otherwise I'm wasting time. And then it's just kind of nice to embrace just a bit of ridiculousness.
The pug life.
In pug life, yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, I think a lot of the time whenever I get frustrated, it's always a mismatch of expectations versus what I'm getting into, And if you have the right mindset, it's a lot easier to take it in stride.
Well, I think that's, like you were talking about with guilds too. That's actually what makes, guilds more fun, is when everyone's kind of on the same page with expectations. You're talking about, hey, I really like raiding, this one day for 2 hours with people who are well prepared, who already know what they're doing, and they just want to raid again and play alts. That's a way more enjoyable experience. And whether it's making a smaller raid size, you can have an easier time finding 10 people that all have the same expectations as you versus 20. I think there's a lot of different ways that could actually be really helpful for like them trying to embrace in systems going forward.
So jumping back to the topic of Mythic Raid, I guess there were some nerfs that just came in to Mythic Tindril and Mythic Farak. Preheat, if you want to pull them up on
Yep,
the
pulling it up.
screen. Looks like it was healing check significantly reduced. Let's take a look.
Ooh. Okay, so
And this
yep.
is not an April Fool's joke.
Not an April Fool's joke. This is for real. I hate April Fools, dude. I always get tricked. Not this time though. I was not tricked by WoW stuff at least. Okay, so we have it here. Tendril Sage Swift. Fiery growth targets reduced to 3 on Mythic difficulty was 4, so that's 25% less. Fiery growth damage reduced by 20%. Okay, wow, that's a lot. Falling stars damage reduced by 15%. That's like the only fatal thing on this fight anymore, unless you just royally screw up a mechanic. Pulsing heats damage reduced by 10%. Okay, so the ads are even less important now. You can just spawn them however much you want. That's going to be fun for pad strats. And then Ferric, we have Shadow Cage now lasts 12 seconds. Okay, so there's a way out of it now. You aren't stuck in it forever. That's okay. And then Flamebound now increases damage taken from Flame Orbs by 5% was 30. Whoa. That's a
wild.
huge nerf. That's for both the Shadow and the Flame Orbs. Both down to 5% from 30%. The intermission has gotten significantly easier with this change. You probably don't need to immune soak at all anymore. I mean, it's like a convenience thing and people are used to the strat, but I don't think you need to do that like one bit. Blaze damage decreased by 20% on Mythic difficulty? Dude.
Wow.
Okay, that's the other big thing that kills you, right? Is the lines.
Oh, yeah.
Lining up with someone else.
Yep.
And then they also decrease the health on the Darnassian Ancients by 20%. How do you feel about healing NPCs, Jack? Do you like that?
I think that how they did this NPC healing was fine, but like the onus should be on them to really improve a lot of the like base UI setup in terms of how you can actually heal the NPCs.
Yeah.
Having them actually appear on like boss frames is very important. Community finds a way. I don't mind them trying to do it every once in a while. I think having like the 5 ads to heal and then the 10 ads to heal was actually really fun. But then when you need big honking trees to heal and there's really only one healer that does any sort of decent single target healing, it's just like silly. I don't even know how else to describe it. It's like no other healer besides Mistweaver will do good single target healing to it.
Yeah.
And so they had that and Laradar, where it's like, okay, well, you are just pigeonholed into bringing this healer because they're the only ones who can do it. You know, I wouldn't mind it if they were actually cranking up like everybody's single target or half the healers single target, so half of the healers could be able to bring it to the table. But when it's just Monk that's able to do this specific job, it's I don't know, it's just kind of annoying. Like why should I ever bother even trying to put atonement on the tree or on the bramble bush as Disc Priest when I know it's the Monk's job to go do that and to go like fixate on it?
Yeah, and they're just gonna be infinitely better than you at it too. It's just it's a
So
loss.
not everybody needs to have great single target, but like nobody even comes close.
Yeah, it feels like maybe this isn't the case, but this is like my impression, at least from last season. It felt like a lot of the healers didn't directly heal you. It felt like they pressed buttons and healing happened, but there wasn't like a direct, for like a lot of the healers I play with in Mythic Plus, there wasn't like a direct cause and effect, as opposed to like they just did their rotation and it's like healing is kind of going out, but they weren't like targeting you for the heal. It just kind of went on you.
Like Monk, I mean, you drop your Phaline and but you're just spinning. You know, you're spinning when you have a great amount of targets. It's just spewing passive output everywhere. If you're getting Shayloon's gift, it's just a lump sum hammer of healing into everybody in your party every 20 something seconds or something like that, right? There's a lot of like passive effects. Paladin has it has bad healing at a holy shock, but the resulting healing in combination with the increased healing from Tears Deliverance, Glimmer, the season 3 tier set, which is when Glimmer's expiring or getting refreshed. It's like all these other things. It's a big component of like the Dragonflight talents, the bloat. They're slicing up the pie with all of these different things where Paladin isn't just like your Holy Shock healing and your Spender healing. It's now all these other passives that are adding into the equation.
Yeah, because like you would say like, oh, dude, I died here. Like I didn't get any heals. And then you actually look at how people heal you and it's like, wait, I'm like not really getting much from that at all. Like it's all just kind of like buffs that they're putting out on me. And then the healing almost feels
And it
disconnected from
happens.
it. Yeah, which is weird because
The
like
healing eventually happens.
it's totally the opposite of what you'd think as like a DPS seeing healing. You're thinking they're filling up the bars, like, and they're actively choosing the bar to fill, and it's happening. I guess to a certain extent, some specs are like that, but yeah, I guess things are a bit different now. But yeah, Mistweaver, OP, nerf him. Is that what you're saying, Jack? Nerfed him, Mistweaver?
A little bit, just a wee
Just
bit.
a little bit.
I don't need Mistweaver doing 15% more healing than everybody else.
Yeah, yeah, it's a bit
Just
it's
like
a bit much.
5% more than everybody else or something like that. That would
Yeah, yeah, a reasonable number.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Cool. So I'd like to open it up for chat now. If they have any questions, and Jack, I think if you have any questions that you've had in your chat since starting, and if it's a good question you want to answer, feel free to start off and kick us off here. If I'm sure me saying this is probably going to make a bunch of people start putting questions in your chat, but
yeah.
If you don't have one, we can go first too.
Yeah, you hit me first if you got one.
Okay. So we had a question about, this is from YouTube. Max Murdoch asks, late to this, but Jack's comment about making tank DPS damage, then keys would be 5x tanks unless they start adding strict rolls to Mythic Plus. Would that solve the no healer situation?
Oh, I mean, like, obviously they're going to tune it enough so that like tanks aren't just going to be able to be stacked infinitely.
Right.
But just the general point of like making it so that tanks are going to be able to do strong damage. I mean, what made tanks back in the day do so much damage was vengeance, and so that it was the act of actually tanking the mob that was increasing their damage. And obviously there are a lot of exploits for something like that, but the general premise of you had to actually be tanking something in order to do the big damage was the whole premise, not
Right.
just them cranking up the damage so high that there's no point in bringing a DPS anymore.
Yeah, I think there's definitely, it's not one or the other. You have to find the sweet spot, right? And it's up to the game developer to find where that balance is. That's part of tuning. So I agree with that. There's another one here. This one was for, I think, something I said. When it doing bigger numbers, wouldn't that cause it to have more input and performance lag? Debrett asks. Yeah, I mean, so again, I think a lot of the latency that you have in the past, Blizzard's talked about this. Like, you remember in it was like the end of BFA, they made a post about latency, or maybe it was before that. I don't remember. It's happened a couple times, but like there's ways to make it so. Yeah, there's ways to make it so that like that's not a problem. The real problem was that there were too many other interactions happening all at once. So it wasn't necessarily that you were doing a big number with your damage. It was that your damage was proccing a million small effects every instance it was doing damage, and that was what was clogging up the whole performance of the game. I'm sure to a certain extent having bigger numbers does cause them to have to store data differently, but I don't think it necessarily means that the game would lag more. I think a lot of that comes down to procs, right? Passive effects, all the systems bloat that we end up with in like a normal expansion. So I don't necessarily think that would be a cause and effect there.
You think of like how many talents you have that are doing calculations for all of your abilities. Then you have everyone else's abilities that are affecting you in specific ways. There's so many different variables all happening at once that really bogs things down. Just as a side note too, like for me personally, I can't stream raid. I don't know what it is, but I cannot stream raid. I have a beast of a computer, and it just doesn't want to work. There's way too much lag, and I notice it's worse when there's more people in my raid team.
Yeah.
Like when we're doing heroic farm early in the season to get our tier or whatever, we'll bring as many people into the raid as we can to get more loot.
Right.
And when we have upwards of 30 people, the game is so laggy. Like it's insane. So I think that's it, and that's why, because there's just so many things happening behind the scenes, and it's a byproduct of WoW just being based on concepts that
it's an old game, dude.
A little old.
Yeah. That game's been around forever. Yeah.
Yep.
It's and the game is like not very optimized either, right?
No.
I mean, you can have a really good computer and have lag, like everyone will in certain scenarios, especially when ads are spawning, especially when there's 30 people in the raid and they're all hitting their buttons in Lust, right? Like the game's gonna lag a bit. That's I mean, it's an old game, so I think that there's like certain things that like we as WoW players just kind of like put up with because we're just used to it being that way. But I would really like to have Heroic not be so laggy. I feel like that, to me, that's the thing that really gets me annoyed is like, it kind of sours my new patch experience walking into a raid, knowing it's optimal to have as many people as possible. And then you get in there and you feel the input latency and you're like, oh my God. It's like I'm playing from EU. This is so bad.
Well, you should be used to it. You're used to it.
Yeah. So I would love to see like that, but I don't know if it's, I don't know how much of a priority it is for them. Dude, they know, Blizzard knows we're going to keep playing their game. We're going to just keep playing it. So, cool. Did you have any questions, Judith, that you wanted to pull in?
There were a few, but honestly, I think we covered a lot of them.
Yeah, we were pretty extensive with it. Cool. Any last ones from you, Jack?
Some people had some questions about how we fix Holy Pally and why is it by buffing the spenders? That was kind of self-evident. They also got to like trim passives from a lot of like Holy Pally's output, as that the abilities that when you actually cast them are the ones doing the healing, because you can dice up the pie a million different ways, but if you're taking, having less pie slices, then all those slices are larger. So apparently there is catch-up gear that's going to be 480 for next season. I had a question from Loot Fever about that. Did you guys see that?
No, that is it on Wowhead right now?
I'm trying to see. I know like Mythic 0 dungeons are also giving you crazy eye level. It's because they made it more difficult.
Yeah, for
Mythic
sure.
0 is giving you 493, and there's 10 dungeons. I mean, 9 effectively, but Dawn, right? Meaning there's like 10 dungeons worth of bosses that you can do to give you Mythic 0 loot.
Yeah.
Which is like normal raid quality gear, which is pretty wild.
That is pretty wild. Well, I guess I'll have to do some of those. Dude, Mythic Zeros, I mean, like, it's kind of fun going in there. I mean, they're going to be 10s, right? So it's going to be a lot harder than what we're used to.
That's the thing. I'm liking that because it's going to be harder, but there's no time limit, so who cares?
Yeah.
Go in and do it, I'm very excited by how well they've made like a difficulty curve improvement for M+. I think it's really good.
Yeah, we got to give credit where credit's due, and Blizzard definitely did like a slam dunk windmill on that whole idea of Mythic Plus. Like the way that it looked before, whenever you look at it in the graph, it's hilarious because it's like before it's like the key started at 20, right? Like where the difficulty goes above. And now it actually makes sense. Like why would you start at 10, right? Like it totally makes sense to start from 1. And I agree it's going to be really fun. I'm especially looking forward to it in the new patch. Like getting in there. I may not do it for many days. Might just be like a 1 week thing. But I'll definitely have fun in that week.
Yeah.
And it always felt weird having Mythic Zeros be so easy.
Yeah. Having them be easy and also not as rewarding. And so now it's both. Now it's going to be difficult. There's no time limit and rewarding. It's really hype.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good change.
I think I read something somewhere. I'm not sure how accurate it is, but I saw that they were raising the time rift rewards as well. So they're all kind of scaling up to sort of function as catch-up gear. They're not going to be as high as Mythic 0, obviously, but they're still being raised to stay relevant.
So that's what they're saying is that Loot Fever is saying it's the Time Rift tokens trades for 454, Dream Surge Dust for 460, and the Dream Surge token gives you 480.
So you can get farming now.
Yeah. So basically, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's not going to be too big of a deal because I mean, normal raid gear is going to be around the 490s.
Yeah.
So it's really good catch up for alts, but I mean, it's just going to be that. It's just catch up.
I know the time rifts were a good way to get your alts, their tier gear from the previous season too, because you can turn that gear into your tier if you put it in the catalyst. Not the current tier, obviously, it would be the one before. But if you have an alt and you're just starting it up and trying to get going, it's a good thing to do. You can do that with the Time Rift gear and the Dream Surge gear.
Yeah, my favorite thing to do, like as soon as I get an alt, is just like start flying around during the Dream Surge, collecting those little green balls, dude. You get like so many crests. You can, if it's on what's the zone for Veldraken, like Tidril, I forget the name of it. Thraldraxxus, yeah, that's the one. If you have it in that zone, that's like premium. You can do like a little loop in the city over and over and over again. In like 30 minutes, you'll have like 250 crests. It's insane. I love it.
Nice.
So that's fun. I think catch-up gear is like overwhelmingly a good thing, right? Because it makes it so much easier to pick up an alt. And if you're doing the season 4 and you're rehashing old content, then you got to kind of spice it up a little bit, make it easier for people to bring in their characters. You know what? Take it a step further. Make crest account bound from the start. just send it, dude. Just send it. I swear people will play the game the same amount or more if you can do this, right? Just do it, Blizzard, please.
They
Free
100%.
the alts.
They won't.
They won't do it.
They won't. It's a great idea, but they won't.
They will not. No, dude.
No.
Okay, this reminds me when they raised the cap on the aspect crests from like what was it 1,200 and something, and they said, oh, we've now we've increased the cap. Yeah. There's no more cap anymore. I'm like, who needs more than 1,200 crests? Like, how are you getting to this point? That's insane.
Nobody asked for that.
Nobody asked for that, and it's a good change. Like it should happen, but like I was totally hoping it would be something else. Again, expectations, reality, mismatch there. I see crest. Oh, let's go. They're making him a compound. No way. Not doing that. Cool. So yeah, it's been great, Jack, having you here. Hope you enjoyed our chats and our questions. Like the answers you gave us, and definitely looking forward to the War Within. So
Likewise.
one last thing for you before you do your plugs in here. What are you looking forward to the most in the War Within currently? What are you most hyped about?
Resetting healing. Yeah, just resetting healing so that damage hopefully appears less bursty. I think that's probably the biggest thing. Is I like how a lot of healer specs play, but the environment that you're playing in with how much bursty damage, how much craziness is going on there is just not super appealing. And a lot of my healer friends have quit or switched to DPS or something as a result of it, and that's always kind of demoralizing. So I'm really looking forward to healing, resetting, and obviously looking forward to delves. Having something different outside of raiding and at Mythic Plus to be doing in the game is always going to be appealing. And experimenting, like Blizzard getting back to experimenting for a new expansion is always going to be good.
What are your expectations with delves? Because the way that I'm imagining them in my head is kind of like digs and Zeralek caverns, and that doesn't seem too exciting to me. What are your thoughts on it?
I have no idea what to expect. They said they're making some new game mode, taking lessons from other things they built, and I'm like,
yeah,
right. You know, if they put it out early enough and they're willing to like change things around, take in feedback early enough, it's going to be a good game mode. Like I even think the very last version of Torghast was actually good. The boss rush, where you just pick up abilities instantly and then you just start killing bosses, like that was really fun.
Yeah, that was sick.
Kind of took a while to get there, but I wish they would have like taken that format and then just put it into the new expansion and went from there.
Yep.
So we'll see.
Cool. So yeah, we still have some tips for all of you in chat. We're going to be going over some UI improvements, the UI improvement of the week. But obviously, we don't want to keep Jack here for that if he doesn't want to stick around. So, not saying that you don't. I just don't want to hold you up because we've gone pretty long here. We've had a pretty long discussion. So, I want to respect your time. Yeah, I want to respect your time. So, why don't you go ahead and give us whatever plugs you want? Where can we find you, Jack?
Everywhere. This is everywhere. Whether it's Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, Wowhead, it's all under Automatic Jack, JAK. We have all kinds of healer content out there and a great Discord community as well. So thanks so much for having me on, guys.
Yeah, appreciate you.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on, man.
Later.
Awesome. Have a good one. Okay, and I'm gonna have to adjust the overlay here 1 second. We'll figure this out a little bit better once we have once we're off of our first episode. But let me try and do a little shuffle real quick here. Yoink and yoink, and then yeah, we'll figure this part out later. But what we're gonna do here today, this is our segment. Let us know how you feel about this segment. But the idea is we're going to show you something that we know, a trick, and we're going to give you the technology to be able to do something to improve your UI in some way. This week, we're going to start off with something that's a bit obvious to some, but you know, whenever you're experienced with something, it always seems like everything's obvious, right? So we want to make sure that y'all get the full picture here. So 1 second, let me just get your portrait there a little bit better. Be nice once I have a scene for this.
Perfect.
But what we're going to be covering today is Plater and bigwigs when it comes to calling out specific mechanics. All right. Touch by Warrior. Everything is supposed to work on one day. How dare you? Yo, what's up? Yes, I know. I deeply apologize. We'll be better next time. Yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there. We're still, this is all experiment, but we're
Yes.
trying it out. Okay, so here I am. I'm logged into World of Warcraft, and I want to show you an add-on that you already know about, but I'm going to show you some functionality that you may not be aware of. Let me just put this down here. Okay, and I'll scale up the window just a little bit. There it goes. That way it fills it out. And then, you know what? I'm going to add a happy little image for Jack here.
Yeah.
So we don't have him
replace
anymore.
him with a stationary image.
Yeah, what should we here? Let me find a good one. Maybe I can do like a screen grab. Okay. So I'm just gonna grab a little Spyro the Dragon and stick back there. Where's it? There it is. Shove it behind this layer. Okay. So yeah, we are gonna show off this feature here. So as you know, Bigwigs, it's an add-on that tells you when things are happening in the raid. But there is functionality here that not many people use. A lot of people may know about it, but maybe not the full extent here. So part of our Season 4 prep, we were kind of talking about this before, but it's like going out and experiencing the dungeons and actually seeing the content. Obviously, once you see the content, then you want to make some sort of preparation for how you can deal with certain mechanics. Like if you die to a mechanic, for instance, like if I'm in a pug key and I die to like a breath or something, obviously, I'm going to be a little frustrated by that with myself, but I'm also going to write it down or make a note somewhere because I'm okay with making a mistake once, but I don't want to be making that mistake more than once, right? Like if I'm making it over and over and over again, I feel like I'm not learning from that mistake. And one of the best ways to make sure that you don't make your mistake again is to go into Bigwigs and then find whatever it is that killed you, right? So if it's, let's say I was doing, Nimue, and I got stunned by a line and I died, right? Or Nimue, whatever people call this boss. So the first thing I'm going to do is obviously be mad about it, right? And then I'm going to try to be better. And the way I'm going to do that is going to be coming into Bigwigs here, finding the mechanic. So obviously you can look at the logs and figure out what it is that killed you, right? And then once you find that, you need to just go in and click this little arrow to the right here. So let's say it's the stun. And we can add emphasis to this, but what I like to do is add a countdown to it. If there's anything that's deadly to me, I want to have a countdown. And you can actually do something really interesting with these countdowns. Obviously, you have like the default, speaking voice, which is like the same as like the countdown whenever you're about to pull the boss, but you also have other languages. So this is like a pro tip for you. The more dangerous the mechanic, the more scary the language I choose. And German is like the highest here. If I hear the German like drei, zwei, ein, I know like something crazy is coming my way, so I need to make sure that I am prepared for it. So I will add a countdown to that ability. I will go in, I will choose a voice for it. You can also download like the Overwatch pack. That one's pretty good because you got a lot of very iconic voices in there that you can use. But yeah,
you can download an Eminem voice pack if you want that too.
There you go. There it is. Eminem.
I think there's an Arnold one as well.
Arnold.
There's all kinds of voice packs.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, just like find whatever it is so that it's distinct, right? Because if it's all the same countdown voice, it's going to kind of just blend together. And if it blends together, then it's like you don't even have it, right? It's like you might as well not have it at all. So that's the number one thing I would do. And then obviously Mythic Plus, like it's a little bit of a different scenario. But if you go into Plater and you go over here to the tab that says cast colors and names. Now, obviously this only works for casts, but there's a lot of casts that are really deadly in Mythic Plus. What I will do is I will make note of anything that killed me or almost killed me, or maybe killed other people. And I will go in here and I'll just add a sound to whatever it is. Not everyone plays with game sounds. Obviously, I'm very big on the sounds. But I think giving yourself a system for it, like having some sort of system in your head, like obviously air horn means really bad, right? But then for me, it's like boxing gong might be a frontal, or like telephone ringing might be an interrupt, right? Just like trying to create a system for yourself where a sound corresponds with a mechanic that you have to deal with will help you react faster to it because you don't need to know what the mechanic is. If you hear the sound, you know what you need to do. So I'll actually go in here and as part of my prep, I will try to add in as many as I can to try and get them all in this list. And it's real simple to do this. You just click the tab here, cast colors and names. Over here on the right-hand side, you've got a search. You can use the spell name, NPC name, zone name. Keep in mind, this will not be automatically populated. You do have to go into the raid or the dungeon and you have to see the thing for it to populate this list. But once it's in there and you can search it and you can find whatever it is that you're getting killed by and you can add additional information for yourself here. Did I miss
Yeah.
anything, Jeddah?
I think the important thing that you mentioned was to have a system for it. A lot like with keybinds between different characters, you want to have a system in place where, like you said, if you're dealing with frontals, every frontal, within reason, is going to have the same sound. So, like you said, you don't even have to know exactly what the spell is, what it's called. You will have to know what it's called to set it up, but in the moment, you just hear that sound and you know, okay, the mob I'm fighting is casting a frontal. I need to get behind it. Um, and you could do that with all different kinds of things. Like if there's a mechanic where you need to run away from them or whatever, just figure out a system and assign a sound to that system. You can do a similar thing in big wigs and little wigs too if you're not a Plater user. I know not everyone is. If you don't use Plater, you should. But if you just use big wigs or little wigs, you can do a very similar thing in those add-ons as well, where you can assign a sound to an ability. You can do all kinds of things. You can emphasize them. You can put a countdown. All of those really important things that you really should pay attention to, because if you don't, you're just, it's clutter on your screen. You don't want to have these things installed and just have them there for the sake of having them there. You
Right.
want to make sure you're paying attention to them. Know where your bars are, because when you play with little wigs or big wigs, they put boss mechanic bars, like countdowns for their mechanics on your screen. Want to make sure you know where those are and pay attention to them. Um, 'Cause there's a lot of situations where people just install this stuff. They'll install weak aura packs, and it just ends up being clutter on your screen that actually does more harm to you than good, because you're not looking at them. You're
Yeah,
not
you're
gaining
not
any
even.
information from them.
Yeah, it's just useless information. I went and grabbed a screen grab of Jack's AFK setup here.
Perfect.
But yeah, no, I agree 100%. If you're having extra clutter, if it's just like information without emphasis, without hierarchy, without any sort of way of sorting through it in your mind, and it's just there, like you just download the weak aura pack from, Wago, right? Like if you don't know what's going in there, if it's just information you're ignoring, it's just clutter on your screen. It's just taking up real estate that could be used for something else. And
Yep.
so always better to go in and modify things a little bit too. I guess going back to bigwigs, there's another thing you can do. So like obviously we have the sounds, the countdowns. You can also change the color of the ability. This is really nice for things that you need to like have stand out. So I think the best example of this is like on Tindrol. If I want to be like hyper aware of when the thing is going to happen, all of the abilities are kind of like the same color, right? But you can go in and you can add a different color, a highlight to it. That way, whenever it shows up, it stands out as like, oh, this is something that I need to pay attention to. This is something that I need to be thinking ahead about. Because rating, when it comes down to it, it's scripted, right? It's all just about knowing what's coming. And you have such powerful add-ons you have access to, so you might as well use them to try and get that advantage, get as much information as you can, be able to see in the future, so to speak. So yeah, highly recommend actually customizing your bigwigs. Don't just run with it. Actually set it up. It makes a big difference.
For sure.
Cool. And that's going to be our tip for the
tip.
week. Yeah.
Yep.
We'll try to hit you with a different one every week. We're starting with one that's kind of like a no-brainer, but we'll try to bring new ones. Again, let us know how you like the format. This is our first ever show, so we're trying things out here. We're willing to get your feedback and hear what you'd like to see. So if you'd like to see something in the show, or if you like something a lot, please just let us know in the comments what you think of the show so far. If you're enjoying the format, what do you want to see, and we'll try to adapt and make this a workshop for you, because this is really about improving your own gameplay. We're trying to bring on hosts that give a different perspective from the ones that we have, and also who will, give a good amount of, tips and tricks for you, and also a good perspective that you may not also have. So,
yeah, like our main thing with this podcast is we want you to be able to walk away from it with even just a short list of a few things that you can take and go apply to your gameplay right away that night. Whether that's a mindset thing or an actual tangible adjustment you can make to your UI or whatever. So yeah, if you guys have any suggestions on guests as well, if there's somebody you think that would vibe really well with us, make sure to let us know in the comments. If you're not already following us on Twitter, we just started up our Twitter page or X page. You can find us at wow_workshop pod. We're on Twitter, and then we also have a YouTube page. That is youtube.com/Warcraft Workshop, and you can find us there. Make sure you subscribe to those platforms. And if there is somebody that you know personally, a friend, a guildie, somebody in your mutual discords that could benefit from any of the discussions that we had today, or the plater and bigwigs tip that we covered today, make sure you link this video to them and spread the word.
Yeah,
All right.
we have a really good question in the chat. Let me answer this one real
Okay.
quick. The
Yep.
question is this going to be a weekly thing? Yes, but next week there is a big celestial event happening. There's an eclipse that's going over the United States. And there are regions in the eclipse where you're going to have totality, which is like where the moon completely covers up the sun, and you don't even need, from what I understand, I'm not a doctor, but you don't even need like glasses for that exact moment when that's happening. So I'm going to be seeing it. I'm traveling across the country to see it. It's going to be awesome. So I will not be here next week. It will be weekly, but not this coming week. So we will be resuming with another episode of WoW Workshop on the 15th.
15th.
Okay.
Yep.
So, but if you want to know exactly always wear eye protection, yes, I agree with that. I'm just saying, like, again, not a doctor. I just heard that it's not as important. Might be wrong about that. Try not to put out false information there. But either way, it's going to be awesome. That's one thing I know for sure, is it's going to be sick. Because apparently whenever it's like totality, like it just gets completely dark. I'm in like a region like where I'm seeing it, where it's like full on, right? Like you cannot get more in the totality than where I'm going. So it's going to be sick. Anyways.
Yeah. Just a quick note. The place that I live right now, the town that I'm in, is one of the best regions in the world to see it when it happens.
Oh, nice.
So my city we're already declaring a state of emergency for that day, because we're already expecting so many people to be just swarming us. Hotel rooms have skyrocketed to like $3,000 a night.
It's crazy, dude.
Wild.
Yeah. No, I'm aware too, because that's where I'm going, is back to my hometown. And it's like, you talk to them about the eclipse, and it's like they're describing the apocalypse, the coming apocalypse. They're like, yeah, we're stocked up on gas and food for like 2 weeks just in case they can't get in. And, hotels are like $1,000 a night. They're estimating that like traveling 45 minutes of normal travel on the roads is going to take people like 7 hours. Basically, everyone's like, do not travel on the eclipse at all. Like it's not worth it. You need to make sure you get there a day early and leave a day later. It's one of those events that's going to be that epic. People are going crazy for it. I just hope the weather's good. I just really hope the weather is good.
Have you seen the TV show Heroes?
First season, because the rest of it was, I heard very bad things about, so I did not go past the first season.
It got bad, yeah. But the eclipse means there will be people gaining superpowers.
Oh,
so
all right. I'm looking forward to that then. What would your superpower be?
I would want to be able to function off 0 sleep.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, no sleep.
Yeah.
Dude, sleep is such a waste of time. Right, yeah, I mean,
I hate it.
I love it and I hate it. I mean, when I'm sleepy, it's like there's nothing better than a good nap, But yeah, I mean, just think of how much more productive you would be with that.
Yeah. If you never felt tired, oh my god.
Yeah, there was this is kind of a joke answer, but like there was this discussion my wife and I had a long time ago about silly superpowers that would actually be sick, and one of them would be conjuring slushies, like a 7-Eleven slushie, like a big ass gulp.
Yep.
Just being able to just get one in your hand, right?
Yeah.
So useful. You'd always have hydration, right? You would be able to have like a nice little treat. You could give it to your buddies. They could take one, right? Just start handing them out. Just think about like how insanely powerful that'd be at like a music festival. Just like start handing out slushies. And like, you have like someone who's being an a-hole on the road, like driving next to you while you're like walking on the sidewalk, and they hit like a puddle and splash you, right? You could just conjure a slushie and just eat that thing, So useful. So much versatility with it.
What's your favorite slushie flavor?
I'm gonna have to go ocean water. It's like the Sonic. It's like a Sonic drink. Yeah. I don't know how to describe it. But it's good. It's not like it's not caffeinated. I don't think. I think it's just like a random mixture of drinks. I don't know. Maybe someone in the chat knows what ocean water is, but it's good. It actually tastes good. It does not taste like ocean water. I promise you. That's just the name of it. Coconut with blue Gatorade and Sprite. It's fucking delicious. There we go, Big Mike.
Ooh.
You know what's up.
Coconut with blue Gatorade. Sprite. Nice.
Or just like
I can get down with that. Yeah.
or just like conjuring really anything, right? Like it would just be so useful. Like you need something, you can just make it. Like being a human 3D printer, that'd be sick.
Anything you could use as a currency too, because it's value. You can trade people those slushies for something else.
That's right.
You always have something of value.
Slushy
like that.
economy. That's right.
Yep. Yep.
I mean, there's just so many uses. It's got to be one of the best superpowers out there. That's what I'm saying.
I think so.
Anywho,
right.
so yeah, again, appreciate y'all coming out. Thank you so much for watching this or listening, wherever you're at. We're gonna try to get this set up on all the various platforms, and looking forward to new guests. Not gonna talk anything about who our next guest is gonna be because that's still up in the air. But again, click that subscribe button, and then you'll be aware whenever our next episode goes live on the 15th.
Yep.
All right. Why don't you go ahead and sign off, Jedith, and then I'll do my sign off, and then we'll wrap this up.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you for watching, everyone. It's been a lot of fun. It was a little project that I've been wanting to get going off the ground for a while now, and I'm super thankful that Preheat is here with me and got this going. So I'm excited for the future. And yeah, if you aren't following us on Twitter already, go follow there, YouTube, and we'll catch you in 2 weeks. Go ahead, Pre.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm so glad that I reached out because I was kind of thinking the same thing, and it seems like you're very passionate about this, and I'm glad we've been able to get together and get everything made so quickly, like the branding and stuff. It's been great working with you so far, and looking forward to where this thing goes. Definitely going to be a fun little adventure to see where we end up with this content. And man, do we need the content sometimes as WoW streamers. Oh my God. Sometimes Blizzard just says, you know what? You're on your own for the next 6 months, right? So it'll be good to fill some of the time. So yeah, again, I appreciate you. Again, appreciate you, chat, as well. If you're wanting to know where to find me, obviously twitch.tv/preheat. That's my main thing. You can search for me on YouTube. And definitely go follow the show. Go follow the pod. You'll find all the information for people's socials in the description below the video once we upload this to YouTube. That was a question that we got earlier, is if we're uploading this. Yes, we are. We have a dedicated channel for Warcraft Workshop where we will be uploading every episode, and we will be including all of the socials and all the other information in the description below. But it's a fresh channel, so we need y'all to go there and click subscribe. So we'll be making posts about that. Definitely get in there. But yeah, that's all I have to really say. So yeah, again, thanks for sticking around, and I hope you enjoyed something. I hope you learned something. And unless there's anything else, I guess we'll see you in the next one.
All right, let's call it there. Thanks for watching, everyone.
Have a good one.
See you in 2 weeks.
Bye, chat.
Peace.